Welcome to another episode of The Greatest Pod, where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ed Greer.
And I'm producer Bill, and today we are doing part two of our look at the entire career of one of the greatest comics artists of all time, Mr. Frank Whiteley. So, in part one, we had started at the beginning of his career and gone all the way through his run on New X-Men with Grant Morrison, bringing us to part two of his career in chronological order. And this is where things are about to get nuts. We've got All-Star Superman, Batman and Robin, We Three, Multiversity, so many good projects to go through. But Ed, let me just ask up front, what did we learn on our odyssey through the first half of Quitely's career? What did we really appreciate about him as an artist?
Um, I think the use of perspective to place the camera in the most interesting places and the ability to figure draw within those different perspectives
Mm-hmm.
enabled him to tell stories in a really unique way.
Yeah, I think he doesn't have what almost every other comic book artist has, which is sort of the go-to pose. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
there's never, if you're asking Frank Whiteley to draw a book, there's never the money images that you can count on being there because he's so committed to creating that three-dimensional space and to making everything appropriate to whatever the moment is that's happening on the page that it's like it's never just going to be the Jim Lee crouched with fists back on either side ready to fight that you see in almost every Jim Lee comic. As great of an artist as Jim Lee is, that's just not the type of thing that Frank Whiteley does.
Yeah, and the thing is, I want people to definitely understand that we are not trying to on we're doing 4 hours on this guy, so we're definitely not trying to diss. We're saying that like, yeah, that ability to always be about the storytelling, even to the detriment of the cute image. That's I mean, you gotta love that because a lot of people, not including Jim Lee, but a lot of people don't want to storytell. They want to find ways to pose characters
Right.
and he just doesn't truck in that, and that's why he's one of the greats.
Right. And so as we jump back in, this was the last image here right next to us that I pulled for New X-Men. And I think this is a great example of like, this was a cover that I think became a poster, this image of Wolverine, where this is clearly a quote unquote money image, but also he's not doing any iconic superhero shit, which I think maybe some people look at Frank Whiteley and see as sort of a detriment in his work. But I look at an image like this and I see nothing but positives. Number one, because the character is full of attitude. Number two, because you've never really seen the character portrayed this way, even just down to the way his hair and his facial hair is rendered, the way his body hair is rendered. There's
Mm.
both like a realism to it, but also something very specific to Quitely's style. And then the acting in the body language. Like you can immediately tell this guy, number one, is not bothered. He's popping those claws, but it's not like he's flexing. It's not like you're seeing him try to intimidate you. It's just like, no, motherfucker, you come at me, I'm gonna fuck you up. And that is written all over his body language and his face. And again, that's something that I get out of very few other comic book artists.
Yeah, I just gotta say I concur with all of that. I love, and again, I'm a sucker for the way he does jackets. There's a
Mhm.
tactile there's something tactile to his jacket and the way that his gauntlet, his the X on his fist, there's fabric there. There's some kind of crumpling going on
Mhm.
all over the place, and so just like body hair sprouts, just like leather wrinkles, he has these thoughts in his head the whole time that he's drawing.
Yeah. Well, so this brings us to an interesting part in his career. And these next couple images are not necessarily going to be chronological, but it was around this time in the early 2000s. He had just come off of amazing back to back runs on The Authority and then New X Men. And so he's now firmly established as like one of the hot artists in comics. And this is where he starts getting more cover work and poster work. And so I want to go through previously we had really been high on, like you say, his use of perspective, scene setting, use of camera, sequential storytelling. But we had also acknowledged that there was, some of those things that he gets criticized for, the lumpiness of bodies, the quote unquote ugliness of faces, like that's still there. And it's something that he's still working through, let's say, as an artist. But when he starts doing these single images, he levels up his work in a lot of ways. And so, boom, let's go to this image of Batman and Robin, which again, not a traditional superheroic image, but this is one of my favorite images of Batman and Robin ever created.
I mean, I really like I like how the body language again, it really portrays the jazz. And like, look, you don't need to draw a bunch of buildings all around because they are at the top and they are looking down, right? So you draw a little bit, just to establish where the hell we are. You have and the uplighting that's coming up. That's
Yep.
obviously a coloring choice, but he has input in those things.
I
And
believe he
base
colored this himself, not to
oh well,
cut
there
you
you
off.
go.
But
Oh,
yeah,
there you
this
go.
this starts a period in his career where, especially with color work, and this includes all the covers of, excuse me, especially with cover work, including all the covers on All Star Superman, he is coloring himself on some of these things, and
Super
this is a
sick.
good example.
So yeah, that orangish up lighting that's popping up from the cityscape that we're not quite seeing because we're up above the light pollution to where
Mhm.
there's like the stars are up there. So I love all of that. And Batman is sort of a sentry bent over, and Robin is just like Robin is like not tense, but he's like looking to jump into something, looking to look over, be as tall as he can be to see what he can see little keys, you know what I'm saying? And he's
Even
like ready to jump into action. He's more of a sentry.
even just this little look on his face, there's something about the way he's got his lip pulled up by his nose, which is something you see kids do all the time. He's got that
Hmm.
little bit of tension in his brow with the big eyes. It's like he's looking to, not even less necessarily looking to start some shit, because I think when we get into Quitely's portrayal of Damian, the Damian Wayne Robin, you see a little bit more of that attitude of like, I'm going to start some shit. This Dick Grayson Robin just looks like, I want to jump off this building right now. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? He's just got that energy of like the Daredevil circus kid, and it's all 100% just down to the nuances of the face and the way that this body is posed.
And I
I
love the costuming hinting
Yeah,
that this is back in the days, like,
yeah.
like
I mean,
for Batman in particular too.
oh yeah. I mean, I think that's what's interesting. His portrayals of Batman, there is, like, this is a very simple version of the Batman costume. It's not like he's doing the Lee Bermejo thing of let's put extra straps and body armor and whatnot. But it's like you point out, that attention to where it's like this is all fabric that all has its own texture, that's all fitting on and around this body, as opposed to just being sort of like a superfluous wrinkle or two an otherwise nude human figure,
Hmm.
goes such a way to selling like this feels like a very homemade Batman costume. This feels of a piece with like almost the Robert Pattinson Batman.
Yeah, and even more so. I mean, it's like a really cool version of the Batman from the serials. I mean, even look at how his
Yeah.
his ears attach to the cowl.
Yeah.
They attach. They're not organically coming out of it. They're like sewn in. It almost looks like. You know what I mean? It's like it's so sick.
Yeah.
They like attach.
Yeah,
So
it's almost like you could see there's like strap work under the under the cowl that's like strapped it in, and it just extends up into these ears.
yeah, dude, that's what I'm saying. I mean, when I'm watching YouTube videos and stuff like this, I'm like using that zoom like a mug. So everybody use that zoom and look at this cowl.
Let's see if we
It's
can zoom in. There we go.
oh, dude, look at that,
Yeah. Man,
dude.
that's
So
so
like,
interesting. Like, even just like these like wrinkles and these I don't even know what that is, but again, it just gives a three-dimensionality. I love the way he does these subtle upshots on Jaws, where you could
mm-hmm,
just see that triangle. And again, like you say, just that little glint of city light kind of illuminating the underside of his jaw.
mm-hmm.
Again, that head is just so three-dimensional, and it's not like he's doing a lot of work with rendering. It's just all in his choice of line and form.
And I love the touch on Homeboy's uniform. I mean, and this is what I think Lee Bermejo started out going for, and
Mhm.
then when he started realizing, well, if there's 3D forms here, then there's armor, and if there's armor, it must be busting into the. And his mind just went to that, like, graphomaniac place where you just have to work it all out in your head. Whereas Frank quietly goes, "What is the dopest way I can make it 3 dimensional in a comic book space?"
Yeah, yeah. I also wanna point out that, like, this is one of the best depictions of an athletic child's body that I've ever seen, because number 1, like, that's a weird request of an artist. Like,
Yeah.
how do you draw a 10-year-old that is an acrobat and has been trained by the deadliest fighter alive? Like, that's not exactly something you're gonna pull reference for.
Right. Well, and it's just one of those things where you definitely, even looking at like gymnasts and stuff like that. Well, what the requirements of what Batman would put on even a 15-year-old Dick Grayson or a 10-year-old Damien or whatever are just outlandish. So just trying to figure out examples of that don't look like you're just drawing a grown up smushed
Right,
down.
right. And I just wanna point this out, this will be the last thing, but, like, this S curve to the leg, like,
Yep.
there's a pronounced, what do they call that? Hyperextension to the knee,
Mm-hmm.
where the ankle is really coming forward from the knee joint. That is so accurate to gymnast body types in real life, and it
Mm-hmm.
looks, not only does it give this figure a real grace to it, but it sells the fact, like, he has overdeveloped, overly flexible legs, and, like, you don't need
Mm-hmm.
to see him doing some crazy shit to understand that. It's
Yep.
just down to the figure drawing.
Yep.
Ah,
Absolutely.
so good. So, this is one of my favorites. This is a Christmas special that Quietly only illustrated the cover of, but I just think there's so much good shit going on here, and I'm almost pissed that they covered it with so much snow, because the drawing here is just phenomenal. Right down to, like, this weird kind of, unnatural form of the sled, rendered in absolutely perfect 3D perspective. Again, that use of 3D perspective, all these boxes are at different angles, and yet they all are inarguably occupying the same space. And even just the way he's able to create this Christmas tree composition, which isn't necessarily like, the most dynamic composition you've ever seen, but it works so well. And the way that it works with his art style really invites you to just examine every single piece of this drawing, right down to, like, the little kids' hats and gloves reaching up to get the presents.
Dude,
And
that was the first thing that I saw, like, the
oh,
the variety of little kid hands and mittens. Some
yep.
kids have gloves, some kids have mittens, some kids have their sleeves all the way down, some kids are coming up. It's like, there's a lot going on just with those little kids, and the wreath. I was looking at the wreath and the bow, and
Yeah.
there's just a lot going on to set up the fact that this is a little thing that's like a sled type thing, and or a parade float. I don't know what the hell this thing is,
Mm.
and they're actually giving out the stuff to the kids. And again, the fabrics on everybody. I know I guess I'm a fashion kid or something, because like I just looked at the underside of Santa Claus's arm as he raises it up, the seam on his arm going up into the seam in his glove, and like he's really there. Santa's really there, just like Superman is really there.
Well, and it's even the way that Santa's, jacket sort of twists. You could tell there's a thickness to the jacket, as opposed to, like, you look at Dr. Light's, this is clearly a leather outfit that she's on, and it's wrinkling like leather, versus Huntress's outfit, which is not leather, but is way more skin tight, but is of a different fabric than Superman's skin tight
Mm-hmm.
outfit. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow he's communicating all that information with just this absolute economy of line that is so good.
Yep.
Yeah. So, let's see here. Next one of your favorites,
Oh
Daredevil.
my goodness.
So, we have another Daredevil piece in the mix here that is arguably better than this one. But I thought this was useful because this is a real illustration of the way he starts experimenting with more mixed media. Like, there
Mm-hmm.
is, I don't know if this was painted traditionally or digitally, but there's a real painterly finish to this that almost recalls someone like Mobius.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, look at that. Look at those buildings, dude. Wait, wait, go back. Like, honestly, dude, the building. Oh my god, just
yeah.
the interest and see how close they are. It like posits this world where these people could actually jump rooftop to rooftop, but it doesn't seem. It seems possible. It still seems super dangerous, but it seems possible in this world, this dense, packed place. And then you look at the figure work, and it is like Moebius,
Yes.
Moebius cantos. No, but yeah, dude, the again windows. We talked
Oh
about
my
that last
god.
time, but every time he does windows, he breaks his foot off on these fucking windows.
I mean, yeah. And again, none of these is cheated. It's like he is giving you the full depth with frame, with overlapping panes in every single one of these windows, including back here in the far
I
background,
know, dude.
which is
Like,
just nuts.
what?
I mean, I don't like, and I don't even know why, but he's drawing every tile on these roofs back here. Like, look at that.
I mean,
That's just
jeez.
crazy. That's
That
crazy.
you know and but it really makes something like that, and I like the it is sort of an experiment because he's even doing like a blurry thing, right? There's like sort
Mhm.
of a blur happening with Daredevil's body, and he's like and they're doing their dance fighting because they don't really, seems like Daredevil and Elektra don't really try to hit each other.
Yep. No, there's a again, there's just like this grace to the figure drawing, and obviously Daredevil here is a little bit beefier and a little bit less graceful. But I mean, just look at the like. First of all, you can absolutely tell how she's moving through space. Like I could draw you, the second before this and the few seconds after this,
Right,
because
right,
nothing is out of place here. It's like you understand exactly how this body is moving in space.
right,
Um,
right.
and there's such a fluidity and a grace to it. Like he's really not skimping on details. I mean, if you look at
Well, hmm,
the wraps on her legs, it's not like those are just a couple lines here and there. It's like he's giving you the texture in each individual wrap around the leg, but it still is so it feels so minimalist and graceful.
and that lighting on us on the left leg, and on the left leg especially, but the lighting on the legs is great, and the lighting coming up from the bottom on her cheeks too, and how it hits her cheeks and nose, how the light is coming up, that's just really really sick. and,
Yeah,
and and you see where the light is, that window and these other windows. Oh man.
yeah. Yeah, the use of those specular highlights, just that those little flecks of white kind of throughout, just goes
Hmm.
such a long way to making the eye land exactly where you want it to.
If
You
I
know,
did one thing this good, I would die happy. One
there
thing.
you go. Well, here's the other Daredevil piece de resistance.
Oh, I love this one. Yeah.
I mean, this again, it's such a different piece, but like the level of detail, while never once falling into either unreadability or even sketchiness, right? I think a lot of artists would draw this, and in order to convey really the sense of chaos that's going on, this is where you bust out your toothbrush and start flicking ink all over the page. And it's like,
Hmm.
from somewhere in here, it's somebody's bleeding, so we're just going to have flecks all over the place. He doesn't need to do that, and there's just as much impact and movement as any other artist could give you in this piece.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it's just shot with a HD camera. I mean, and you know what I'm saying? Like
Like high
these
frame
guys.
rate, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like it just captures that exact moment in time.
The exact moment. And I just love how he uses every single thing to give you movement. Like
Great
that
call.
the guy that can't quite control himself at the bottom, all the shuriken and stuff following it in that sort of parabolic arc,
Yep.
right? You could tell where everything was coming from and where everything's going because of how he's using every single thing, from even the pointing, the directional devices of these guys swords and bow staff that are behind him that are going to land on Daredevil. Oh god, what's Daredevil going to do? Well, he's catching that sword, so he can probably fend off that guy. You can infer so much. If this was a panel, if you could ever do panel to panel this dope, I mean that you'd see exactly the next panel and so on and so forth.
Well, I think to that point, I mean, one of the things that Quietly does, and I've seen him do this many times, is in a crowd scene like this, he'll use the multiple characters almost as like snapshots through time. So
Mm-hmm.
like they're different, but you could literally see one ninja crouching on the roof, jumping off the roof, getting ready to attack, Daredevil turning the table, and oh, now he's falling with no weapons. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like you
yeah,
see the full action in this one piece.
yeah, yeah, dude.
Oh.
I mean, this is really up there, and I have this on one of my Pinterest boards. Yes, real men use Pinterest.
Nice. So just moving on, he does some really out there covers. This is for Hip Flask, which was created by the great letterer Richard Starkings. But I mean, what a different image than the last few we've seen. Like this is just pure joy, just bright
Yeah,
colors. And man, this like I feel good looking at this.
yeah. No, this is, and again, that hyper clarity there. This is one particular moment, and he really does. He's like a human high definition, high frame rate camera, and he just gives you the greatest snapshot. And I think that's what, we've talked about him supposedly being late. I don't, when you're this good, late is not a concept. Like,
100%.
so I think he just has to think about it. Like, what's the best angle I can shoot this hippo from?
Yeah.
What can this chick be doing? What makes sense for her to be, if in the next moment, how would she be safe if this her and this hippo are jumping? What would be an appropriate thing? But what's almost the most dynamic? Where should I put her feet? Do I have to see her feet? I don't know that I have to see her feet. It won't look weird. I'm telling you, because it'll look like emotion. The one people won't even think about it. They won't even
Yeah.
talk about it on podcasts. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's so much thought that went into this picture.
Well, I think this, so I'm going to point out two things. This hand is a great example of where like there are so much there's so many easier positions in which to draw the hand. Like just draw it with all the fingers outstretched. Why take the time to
Mhm.
figure out the anatomy of the pinky kind of curls in and now we've got this overlap and what does that do to the rest of the hand? And like it's a small thing, but
Yeah.
this is what I
It's
mean when I said
huge though.
that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Like, and this is what I mean when I said there's no stock Frank Quitely image. Like, this is not a stock hand that he will draw, in every image because it's easy for him to go to. This is a hand that is specific to this character in this moment, and every single one of his hands works that way. And I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, they're all the way. I mean, look at her right hand.
Mm,
Like, that's a hand for your ass. A lot of
yeah,
times a hand is not showing every finger. It's figuring out how much of the hand you would see in that. And her, obviously her left hand is a triumph too. But I've
yeah.
just looked at that right hand. It's like, okay, the little finger comes out where?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's a complicated piece of anatomy is the hand fingers are curling, but the hand is stretched back from the viewer and like how do those overlaps work, etcetera. I mean, it's
Mhm.
also interesting because I can see in the motion of the characters, she might have just launched herself off his foot or she was riding like on his leg and then jumped
Mhm.
off there. It's like
Mhm.
there's so much of that inferred action just from the choices he makes when he draws it.
Dude, and the pores on the
I
hippo's
mean, come
face.
on, come on. And again, this is one that he colored himself. If you look, there's the signature. There's no colorist signature, and this has this kind of texturing in the color is a trademark of Quitely that we'll continue to see in other work that he's done. But nobody on a coloring circuit is gonna take the time to dimple every single mark he puts in ink. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The under chin part too, I'm seeing, it's just so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Also, best feet in the business. I mean, come on.
Dude, I was about to comment because we're trying to do this one a tiny bit faster than our last one, but
Yeah.
dang it, the pants, that little uprise of his front leg pants, and then
Yep.
you see it mimicked on his other leg. It's just, that's how his pants go. That's how you can
They're
see his uniform and the flappiness of the cape back of his coat.
oh yeah.
Oh man.
Well, no, the pants are great because those are pleated pants catching the wind as he jumps, and that's what
Yeah.
happens. Ah, it's
Mhm.
fantastic. All right. So this I thought was worth taking a look at.
This
Little
is
Indiana
archival.
Jones by Frank Quitely.
That is wild. And it's on the back of like a piece of paper or something.
Yeah, I don't know what he. I kind of want to read through it. I see Frank Quitely. I don't even know what this is on. But um, another great mixed media thing. This is clearly painted traditionally on top of either a technical pen or just some really hard graphite. But again, for a guy who gets criticism for drawing samey or ugly faces, that's fucking Harrison Ford right there.
Hey, it's Harrison Ford in the action comic milieu. You know what I'm saying? He didn't, because you can see from his, like the fact that he puts him in like a blue shirt,
Hmm.
he doesn't try to he doesn't just do that jacket. This is a day in the life. Look at the red gloves and the sort of red boots and this sort of blue red yellow palette that he's doing with this jazz, and when the whip is down there because he's got like this frankly big ass gat that doesn't, you know what I'm saying, that seems like a 44 Magnum or something. You know what I'm saying? He's doing. I'm just saying he's comic bookizing it. He's not
Yep.
just trying to be on model.
Yep. And yet so much life. I think his color sense is really underrated. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Quitely, just because he works in so much black and white, but his color stuff is phenomenal.
Well, he's talked so much about how people try to, and a lot of people, if you watch all his interviews, he mentions a couple people that did it a lot that he didn't like it, but whatever. I'm not going to do that. That's his words. But there have been people who over, and maybe to a great degree oversaturate the colors that he would want in his mind.
Mhm.
A lot of times he'll want a more muted color than the colorist wants. And I bet sometimes he's right. I mean, a lot of times he's right because he's a genius, but sometimes he's probably wrong. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Because everything doesn't have to have his color sensibility. But man, his color sensibility is great.
Yeah. I love this Jonah Hex cover. I mean, I don't know that there's much going on here that we haven't already talked about, but between just the three-dimensional accuracy of this gun, between the texture he puts in everything from the face to the glove to the jacket lining, again, this is something he colored himself, and hopefully you can start to see that like this level of texture going on here in the coloring is very specific to him. But even like you were just saying, at this muted palette, the fact that this is almost like a wash,
Yep.
I just love this. I love it so much.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have too much to say about it that it doesn't say for itself, but yeah, I just like the little tick marks on the metal of the gun. I mean, to me, that's instructive of how to make something look like it's been through something and that there's a randomized nature to the universe that you're drawing, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Totally. Well, and the fact that he chooses to reinforce it with color. Again, the specular highlights of like, yeah, if there's a little divot there, the side that's facing the hot overhead sun, because clearly that's what's happening here, is
Hmm.
going to catch a glint of it because it's made of metal. So
Yep,
phenomenal.
absolutely.
He did this entire series of covers for American Vampire, which was a series that I have not read. But again, just goddamn, goddamn.
I mean, as a drawing feat, this is insane. And it has all of that like appeal and yet ugliness that is part of, I think, you know what? I think that was the contribution of European comics, and I mean Europe as in the UK and Spain and all that shit.
Yeah.
It just seems like they had a feel for the grotesque and the over so-called over rendered, and then they brought it to comic sensibility of dynamism,
Mm.
and it just both of them fit together hand in glove.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. I don't know if this is grotesque or sexy. It's literally both. You know what I mean? Like,
It's all of them.
and I don't know, man. I still can't wrap my head around. He is drawing individually every bud, ridge, whatever on this tongue. Not only does it not look like there's not a single one of them out of place, not only does it not look too busy, but you see the three-dimensional folds and points of
Hmm.
tension created by the character just in the way that he's rendering those cells, those buds. It's
Yeah.
like he gets so much depth even here on the undersides of the lips, just in how he chooses to render those little minute details. The fact that like here on the underside of the tongue, you could tell not only is it getting, slimier and less rough, but it's also catching that underlighting that he loves to do
Mhm.
so much. Oh, it's so fucking good.
And just the dynamism of the bottom teeth. There I just been looking at the I guess molars,
Yeah, yeah,
just I it's so crazy. And again, look at those boots and pants. Yeah,
freaky.
I'm just and again, and when people can go back to the last episode, look at how he does a homeboy's like right hand. Both of his hands actually are just amazing. But that vascularity on his right hand, he loves to
Mhm.
render that with like a negative space technique. Like he'll do some flex to indicate, well, this is a ridge over there. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people might use a line to draw all that, but he uses little flex.
And I just love the asymmetry of this pose. Like there's so
Yeah.
much acting, the relaxation, just the weird sexual energy of it. But it didn't have to be this organic of like this arm is more forward and the shoulders a little bit higher and this one's
Hmm.
back, but like the ridge on the tongue is a little
And
higher.
some of the buds are blocking his thumb because he's making an indentation in it because he's really on it.
Yeah. It's like you can see him kind of squirming his way back into his seat. And it's
Hmm.
all just down to the body language this dude's able to convey. It's just unbelievable. So another, I don't know if this was also from American Vampire. Not much more to say here, but this is one of my all-time favorite Frank Whiteley feat right there.
Dude, yeah, I think that's the standout on this one.
Dude, I don't know what I mean in a drawing that showcases a lot of feet. There's
That
something
is a
about this one right here. It's like I can feel
yeah.
the impact about to happen.
And again, he's just got that classic comic book mastery of that back foot too. How much
Mhm.
of it do you show? How much of the boot is visible? How much of the calf? What would make it look too squat?
And the little detail of using these loose flying laces to indicate movement. Like this
Ugh.
leg is kicking back, so you're seeing that lace, while this leg is shooting forward, so those laces are pinned back. Like
Mm-hmm.
just amazing
Mm-hmm.
stuff. All right, let's take a minute to just appreciate the genius of this single image. This is one of the all-time great Frank Whiteley images. To my knowledge, this is the only time he's ever drawn anything Star Wars. This is an entire movie, or at least it's an episode of television in a single image.
Wow.
And this is great. I mean, I could do an hour just on this image. Not only do you have this signature Frank Whiteley down shot where it's like everything is sort of receding back in 1 point perspective, but it's not 1 point perspective. It's actually this weird 2 point perspective, which creates the feeling of curvilinear perspective because there's one vanishing point up here where like the flat planes of the floor and the bar are receding to. But there is also a vanishing point somewhere down here where all of your horizontals, or excuse me, your vertical surfaces are retreating to, but it's like it's so subtle. You see it here. Obviously, this is not a parallel line, but it's like from edge to edge. This vanishing point has to be 4 feet down below the border of this entire image. Like if this was on a piece of paper, it's like way off the paper. So I love the perspective and the way that it's used to just cram in as much information as possible. But the way these guys are injured, right? Like this hand, I don't know, like you can find where that was cut off of. Like it's one of these guys in here. Like this severed foot comes off of this robot right here because there's his other foot. You could tell those are matching feet. And oh, yeah, he's missing this leg over here. Like this robot, this half a robot's head, I don't know if it's in the image, but like I wouldn't be surprised if it was. I'm just looking. But it's like that commitment to I'm going to show you every detail with beautiful minimal line work in absolutely perfect perspective just invites you to explore every corner of this image.
Well,
Oh,
I mean, and the thing I'm really marvel. I really have looked at it this whole time and examined it and looked for some of those cues that you were talking about. But the thing that I'm really struck by is how, after looking at it for a few seconds, you kind of get the story. The
Mm.
story is the Jedi goes to like the bathroom, I guess, and
Uh-huh.
and while he's in there, some shit's popped off, and his Padawan fucked all of these dudes up like viciously to the point where there's like lightsaber scars in that bar that's made out of something that could survive lightsaber scar. Like it didn't just cut it all up; it just went into it just enough, and it's part of her moves to cut these guys down. And yeah, like you were saying, look, following the trail of arms and the fact that the arms are off and stuff like that indicates Jedi fighting style, which lets you know that she's a Jedi. I can't even really see her lightsaber that she's putting back into her thing at this level of
Oh,
image,
I
but you
mean,
know that she is.
it's
Yeah, there
barely
you
there.
go.
It's
And,
barely
and
there.
she's just because she's putting it away, almost like not ashamed. And then when you look at it this close, you can see there's Tusken Raiders. There's the Tusken Raider
Oh, yeah.
that Tusken Raider staff that they use with the pine cone thing at the end. Yeah, that's that thing. It's just amazing.
No, that's the thing that's wild is like these are all he takes some liberty. He draws the Frank Quitely version of droids, but like all these other characters are like established species of Star Wars characters, and he gets
Mm-hmm.
the details very, very right. One of my favorites is like, here's the other half of this guy's head, and then
Ah,
meanwhile,
it's up there. Yeah.
it's like he's a droid, so like his oil or whatever just dripping all over his body and pooling down in his crotch like
Oh,
that.
I didn't even see the bartender. Look at the
I
bartender.
know, right here. He survived.
Yeah. Oh
And look at these
man.
bottles. Every one of these bottles is clearly a an alien drink of some kind. Like none of them looks exactly like an Earth bottle. He puts weird textures on the bottles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And you can see the coolers under. I mean, like now we're
yeah.
geeking out, but the coolers where they keep the stuff
Those are yeah,
are in
those
perfect
are clearly
perspective.
the tops of refrigerators right there. Oh, I love this image. And
Oh, and
also,
just real quick, the
yeah.
weathering on that door. Just look at the weathering on the door. Just the little cracks, all the little crags, all that stuff is way instructive.
Mm, mm.
Like, look at how real that looks,
And
but
it's
still cartoony.
Well, and it's just as simple as like creating this weather that follows the geometry of the door,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like you make this line just a little bit thicker than the rest, so clearly that's a heavy divot, and then you just show the geometry of that door with a single line, and where it's meeting the edges, it's a little bit more gouged out because there would be a little bit more natural weathering there. Like it's just immaculate drawing.
it really
And
is.
I mean, all this without even mentioning this absolutely stellar contrapposto stance where
Mm-hmm.
like she's got that lean because all of her weight is here on her back foot because she doesn't give a fuck. There's nothing tense about her at all. And so it's that classic Renaissance contrapposto, the way the hips are turning this way as the head is turning this way, and the weight is more on this back foot. And the again, absolutely flawless hands, and even just the fact that like her sleeves are a little bit too big, further emphasizing like her youth. I oh, good lord, man.
Dude, yeah, I mean, and just down to, I mean, and look at the Jedi uniform on Homeboy.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, the number one best feet in the game. Both of them have the greatest boots on in the history of the world, and
Yep.
the enemies have great shoes. If some of them are across the room because they got their legs chopped off, it's just every wrinkle, every fold is there for a reason, and there's so many of them. I can understand why he takes so long,
Yeah.
but I can see why they are so valuable to him,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
This really is too. I mean, you said it. This is a great example of this is a great example of the best feet in the game because there's a shit ton of feet and every single one of them is perfect. Like,
Mhm.
oh, good lord. I could stay on that forever. All right, so now we get into, I think I might only have one image, maybe two. Yeah, I've got two. He did a little 8-page story for a Sandman. It was Sandman Endless Nights, sort of a series of short stories that Neil Gaiman did with some of the best artists in the game. And he drew the Destiny volume. He drew and painted the Destiny volume. So this was sort of the culmination of his experiment with the mixed media. And this is just some of the most gorgeous stuff you'll ever see in a comic book.
I mean, well, he even as a painter, he understands that every part of the canvas is going to be covered in some sort of color,
Mm.
but it's just a depending. It's like because even that white, if you just sampled that white, it's like a deep, creamy like white. It's not white, but
It's
it
not the
seems
paper.
white given how yeah, it's not the paper, right? But
Yeah.
but it seems white given the values that he gives other stuff. And I love the times that he chooses like the shadow on the foremost lady's leg right in the very center of the image.
Mm.
That shadow right there. There's stuff I just love that they're really standing on a book like there's something to like that and of course all the different realistic bodies and the stark lack of any sort of sexuality. This is definitely about people. These are human beings. These are people's whole histories, you know, and they're naked because they're at their most primal state, but there's something to communicate. I don't even remember the story that good, but I know that just looking at this.
Yeah, I think the story was essentially just sort of describing the Destiny character, that he keeps a book that has the entire history of everything in it. And this is just an illustration of the fact that like the story of every person to ever live is in his book. And I love the fact that like look at these pages. He's got diagrams of people in perspective on these pages as they're fluttering. It's just the commitment to that level of
Oh my
detail.
gosh, I did not peep that. I mean, I peeped that there were things on there, but yes, the and the almost like the Loomis method.
Yeah.
Um, head the how many heads tall is everybody? He's designing how many heads tall people are going to be.
Oh my god, dude. And I did want to point out, you pointed out this shadow. It's the fact that like it reinforces the light source, right? Like this right here is the shadow from her arm that's sticking out because she's got her hand on her knee. And again, it's just a little tiny thing, but it's caring enough to pay that close attention that like, well, no, I established that there's this bright white light source and it's clearly coming from this ish direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I, you got to carry that through. And
Mm-hmm.
he's the sort of guy that he examines the page that he's creating more than you do as the viewer. And like
Yeah.
very few comic book artists do that. I also just this use of negative space of like I know you say it's not a pure white and you are correct, but the fact that it does portray itself as like a void
Yeah.
in this world, and the fact that the guy whose job it is to document the entire world is literally cloaked in the void of nothingness
Yep.
is such a crazy amazing choice. And so then that continues here to this sort of unorthodox layout of this page where there's not panels per se, but we see the book emerging in his hand, and then from the void that surrounds the book, his face looking down at it. It's this weird bending of time and space, but it just works perfectly.
And again, that Frank Whiteley hand, look at how he represents vascularity. Just a little bit of the light is coming down from the top, so the shadows on underneath where the vein is. But does he draw just a line? No, especially not in the painting. This is like, see, and this is what he's going for, even in line art.
Right. Right. He wants that delicate detail of like, you can tell the heaviness of this book because of how the things in the back of this guy's hand, some combination of tendons and bones, are flexing.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants you to feel that.
Yep.
Oh, so good. Oh man, this came out too small. It's a great drawing of the Endless, but it's too small for us to really look at here. Go look it up yourself. We picked a low res version. Sorry about that. All right, let's talk We Three. And look, I'm going to have less to say about this. This is the type of image that has been dissected to death on the internet when it comes to We Three, which is the very simple story of three cybernetically enhanced soldier animals that escape from the project that created them when they find out that that project wants to shut them down. And they go on a homeward bound journey looking for somewhere safe. But along the way, the military is trying to kill them. And so this is how they respond. And like every page of this book is an achievement. I mean, this is just one of the most virtuoso examples of comic book art you will ever see. Um, it almost spoils you for comic book art. Like, I don't know that anybody does anything more impressive than the totality of We Three. All that said, this portrayal of action, of showing unbelievably dynamic, you look at this image, he is doing snapshots through time of the dog eviscerating this Jeep, everything perfectly rendered. And then he's giving you these snapshots of everything that's happening in between those moments, all the details. And it's just glorious. I, though, want us to get to some less in your face examples of this art. But before we do, Ed, anything to appreciate?
The thing, I've seen this page so much, dude, and there are things that just hit your eye every single time. It's in the cat panel. The panel go down, the helmet being
Mm.
dimpled by all the fire coming through. I just There's something powerful about that because you see the cat is raining just blades from the sky, and just the military helmet with those dimples of the blade has already gone through and it's already in that soldier's brain and he's already dead. And then you see him go down. You see it hit him in the top of his head, and then you see him realize that he's dead, and then he goes all the way down to being dead. And there's just something powerful about that. And even the defensive wound of that guy's hand coming up to try to do something about
Oh,
it, but it goes through his hand into his brain. There's just so much to that section of it. And I just see it every time I see this page. I've seen it probably thousands of times. And every time my eyes go directly to that dimpled helmet, that moment.
yeah. I always go to this thumb where it's like, oh, that blade just went straight through. Oh, it's so visceral.
Yep. And
And
some people go to that molar. I mean, I think this might be
yeah.
the first time of them actually looking at that stray molar bouncing around up in the dog panel. It's just
Oh,
great
oh
in one
yeah.
of the small inset panels. It's just crazy what's happened to these people. The destruction these guys leave in their wake, like your foot or your tooth or your eyeball or your glasses are just floating in the air cartoon style as they plow through you.
Well, one of the great, I mean, this whole thing is a triumph, but like one of the great things is this sequence of the pedal where it's like this guy is trying to brake as the dog jumps at him. Now his foot it comes off because the dog got him, and now the pedal is just at full extension because that guy's gone, and now he's really just a mass of missing teeth, missing foot, the rabbit's foot he was wearing around his neck. I mean, like,
For good
boom,
luck.
right there. Oh,
Yeah, and just the symbolism. I mean, I know part of Grant Morrison's in here too, but like the symbolism of like, yeah, the rabbit's foot you kept for luck. You killed a rabbit or took its foot for your luck, and this animal destroys you trying to escape the military complex that you obviously worship. It's just like, mm,
Mm.
mm.
Also, best feat in the game. Still happening. All right.
Still happening.
um, I wanted to bring this into the conversation. Oh, well, we'll get to that one. I wanted to bring this into the conversation just because, again, this is a great example of his use of a simple line and of negative space and letting the color do some of the work when we are fully aware that he can draw his ass off anything you want. But because he's a guy who is so adept at putting those little tick marks, like the thing we saw on the door frame in the Star Wars piece, creating that sense of texture with those minimalist lines. When he doesn't do it, it becomes even more impactful because you can tell how slick and how new and how high tech these animals' armor suits are just because of the amount of restraint he puts into rendering them.
Yeah, I definitely have nothing to say to that because that is true. He could have put tick marks all over them, but they are sleek. You're right.
Yes,
Excellent
sir.
call.
Um, Another image that has just been dissected to death, no pun intended. Quietly has used this composition before, and I think since, but it has never been executed as great here. The point of view of the bullets coming through their target. Um, I don't know what else there is to say. Like, you just
Well, I
have to
mean,
soak in how amazing this is.
and the thing that I just look at as as instructive is the fact that the panel before, which you don't have to see, just let me tell you, it happened. uh he's running on the treadmill and he just sort of senses something's going wrong, so he goes and he grabs up two, I guess they're HKs, I guess,
Mhm.
and they have like a foldable stock on them and stuff, and he thinks he's loaded for fucking bear, and he comes around that corner and gets shot up to a degree that is inhuman by these inhuman cyborg monsters, and just the uselessness of having two fully loaded HKs with banana clips, and it's
Which you can
useless
still
against
see,
this.
which you can very pointedly still see in this image.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like he just thought he was ready for Freddy, and this is what happened to his ass.
Oh, God. And again, the restraints of like, if you're going to put this much detail into the background, which is the body getting eviscerated, fill your foreground with nice, simple shapes that you could almost look straight past, because you don't, the eye doesn't need to do a lot of work to understand what these foreground elements are. And so,
Mhm.
even without the blur effect, which I think is a great call, but even without it, it's like you want to look through these objects to see what's going on behind them.
Yep,
It's so
absolutely.
well done.
This is one of the best things of all time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. So I think this might be our last of our big splashy, holy shit, look what Frank Whiteley is doing examples. Um, it is scientific fact that a cat has reflex ability many times more than a human. Like, literally the refresh rate of their brains is different than ours. And so Morrison and Quitely wanted to figure out a way to portray that in this story. And this is what they came up with. The cat is literally moving through the what we would consider the dead space, the gutters between panels. He's moving so fast, which
Mhm.
makes sense because in a comic book, the gutter is where your eye refreshes. That's where the edit happens.
Mhm.
And in order to illustrate that, Quitely takes the two-dimensional panels of the comic and portrays them in three-dimensional space, allowing the cat to move in the space between them. And holy shit, this is the result. I you can't say enough about it.
And you know what? And it's funny that you interpreted it that way, which is the definitely the way. But I'm saying, like, for me, just if I'm just coming at this, I don't know any of that stuff.
Mhm.
I'm thinking of it as there's a second, right? A second exists, right? And like I said, I'm just a regular guy. I don't know nothing about refresh rate, none of that shit. A
Sure.
second exists for us as this thing, and this cat, the second is so stretched out that it's like we're somewhere maybe at the beginning or in the middle of this image, and he's already we see time straight on, but he's so fast that he's on the outer edges of that second, like as he goes through the second bends before you, like comic book frames or something. I don't know, man. Just any way you interpret this is the cat is breaking the concept of what you can do in a second.
I was going to say,
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I brought my, esoteric scientific definition to it, but what you just said is essentially understanding what I just said, just without the science terms. So it's
Mm,
like Quitely clearly achieved what he wanted to achieve with this page.
dude,
Oh,
it's how you again, the last thing's last. It's just so communicative.
yes.
He's so communicative. That's and people there's so many people who think they're geniuses who can't communicate anything. You know what I'm saying? You communicate well. I hope that I communicate well.
Mhm.
Frank Quietly does it, all the stuff that we strive for in communicating well with all this work. Imagine doing this much work and not getting the feelings we're getting out of
Oh,
it.
well, and I also want to point out that, like, again, he's doing all of this without any sort of effects, without speed lines, without
Right.
splatter, without,
Right.
any of those things that you consider part of the comic book terminology. So for him, it's all just down to number one, in my character designs, let me create elements that are going to allow me to show motion. So they've got these weird lit up antennas coming out of them. He's got these sort of corded pieces of rubber, I don't know, something underneath the shoulder armor. And then he's got obviously got the tail. And so Quietly uses all that stuff to absolutely sell the motion. Like the way that that rubber corded whatever is at absolute tension here. That arm could not be moving faster. The way it's buckling here, he's clearly gonna roll up and getting ready to do some kind of other move. The way that everything in the body just sells. I'm coming down and I'm swiping and I'm gonna roll into my next move. It's like there's so much motion and not a single speed line to be drawn on this page.
Dude, and thank God Grant Morrison could see when you look at a cat, if you've seen those videos of cats that just won't take it anymore,
Yeah.
a lot of times people have said things like, well, if a cat was the size of like a dog or a lion or something, they'd be wrecking shop, blah, blah. And there's all these ways to try to communicate. What if something that fast actually had you want to call it heft, whatever you want to call it, to really mess you up?
Mm.
And this is like this is, as you'd like to say, the apotheosis of the idea
Yeah.
of the what a cat could do to you with proper armaments, to
Yeah.
give it heft.
Yeah. I also just think I also just think it's amazing. You know, Quietly gave himself quite a task when he designed these characters because it's all these overlapping plates of armor. Just pay
Hmm.
attention to the shoulder armor. The cat's arms are up so they kind of extend out like wings because that's how they sit. Now the cat's arms are drawn in and so they're pinched to the chest. They're extending out in that way. And the armor on the back even folds apart a little bit because that's how scrunched up the body is. And now it's like he's moving forward. So the armor rotates and comes forward with the body.
Hmm.
And now it's like, just look at the way that the plating is sitting here versus here, for example. Like
Hmm.
you can tell how everything moves along with the cat's body. It's just insane. It's
If
just,
you hired him to draw the character designs for this, and then he goes, "All right, mate, I'm out," you'd be like, "Hold up, hold up, hold up! You
yeah.
cannot leave. It's
You,
explained to me."
or you'd be like, I'm not drawing that. F you. Like you wouldn't
Right.
want to do it.
And that's why the beauty of him being on things that have sort of short runs is
Mm,
that, yeah, these things don't have to be done monthly, or
exactly.
rather they won't be.
Yeah, where they never will be. So now I want to just get into some of the more low key things that make We Three great. Here, just look at his ability for someone who is a minimalist, for has that very recognizable comic book style. Look at his ability to draw realism. Look at his ability to set this scene with just quiet realism and how well it works.
And even motion, like there are like hawks or something in the sky, and one of them is watching the hawks so the other ones can eat their little food.
Mm.
And then but there's something way more dangerous than hawks and stuff coming through, and the rabbit is running to tell him, you know what I'm saying? Oh man, this is
Well,
crazy.
and even just the establishment of the geography, it's like I mean, from panel one, and it just keeps getting more and more enforced. There's a big hillside, big hillside, big hillside. Oh shit, we're running down that hill. Like,
Yep.
oh, it's so good.
Yeah, you can't get confused on the geography, and as you notice, it's always from the same direction.
Hmm.
It's from the left down to the right, left down to the right, left down to the right, left down to the right. He doesn't confuse you at all,
Yeah,
especially given the fact that they're stacked. So that's a brilliant call, Bill. That's great stuff.
yeah. So this is the part of the prequel elements to that giant 2-page splash of the guy getting eviscerated by the bullets. There's a couple things going on here that I think are worth mentioning. Number
Best
one
feed in
is,
the game.
I mean, best feat in the game, but the storytelling of like, you see nothing but a single glowing ember to show you that there is something in that grate. And all, as far as you could tell here, There's something in the grate, and it's looking at a guy who's kicking it with a bottle of beer. But we pull back a little bit. Again, classic Frank Whiteley, weird 2 point perspective, looking downward. Pull back a little. Oh no, these guys got machine guns and grenades just laying around. Pull back a little bit further. We can tell, oh, whatever it is back there has moved because now it's in the fireplace as opposed to in the grate. And these guys are paramilitary. They're wearing camo. That's how geared up they are. And by the way, the light source is this shitty little TV box. So this is clearly not like a US Army outfit here, right? The way that they've got things scattered, and now they got this
Mhm.
shitty old TV. And oh, let's take a minute to look from the point of view. So we know that it's not just lights, it's something that can see, that's looking, that is moving with intention. And then all that leading to the moment when that thing is noticed by these guys. And in the span of those 5 panels, you set the mood, you create panel to panel curiosity in the viewer of like, I'm giving
Mm.
you more information, more information, more information. Oh shit, now these two forces are going to meet. It's just masterful stuff off of a very quiet page where literally nothing happens.
Well, I mean, and there's so many ways to do this not dynamically. That's
Right.
kind of my only contribution to this, to what you said about this page. There's so many ways as it could have been done with no dynamism, very little perspective, a nice big wide panel of all of this stuff around the top, a couple in the middle of different hands going to play cards or something. Then that bottom one would probably be, they would try their hardest on that, but it still wouldn't maintain the like wonder of that bottom one where they're like, wait, what?
Mm,
One guy noticing and having a big reaction, one guy just noticing it because he hasn't had time to react, and a couple other guys on either side unaware. I think they ended up drawing their ass off, probably drawing a lot more than Frank
mm.
did in this one, and not getting that actual emotional beat is what I'm saying.
No, that's fair. This also, kind of apropos of nothing, establishes one of my favorite motifs in We Three, which is except for Roseanne, the good doc. Well, except for the two people in the story who actually take care of the animals. The only time you ever see a human's face in We Three, like a full face, is before they die, which I just think is kind of amazing.
Excellent.
Um, Another example of unbelievable. This is going to be actually a 2 image one. Unbelievable story, panel to panel storytelling. The acting of this dog frantically trying to save this guy, pulling him up onto the rocks, and sort of the way the camera pulls out to create this feeling of like loneliness and isolation, and the fact that these cramped panels are clearly not showing you the whole picture. Like, it's again an example of him parceling out the information in a way that makes you want to look at the next panel, um, leading to the reveal, which actually takes a whole nother page, which is kind of hilarious. But ultimately, we get down here. It's not until you get to this panel down at the bottom that you realize that guy he just saved was dead to begin with. It's been half a body the whole time. He just didn't realize it, the dog. Um, Again, it's a quiet moment that just lands so hard.
He was trying his damnedest, man. He was trying to be a good dog, and it also shows you it's a story building part because the dog is the one that is most down with people. Like the
Yeah.
rabbit been getting chased forever, the cat don't give a shit. But the dog is like, man, people are cool. They give me pets and stuff. They're cool. I gotta be the guy who saves them and is better to them than they were to us. And it didn't even matter because that dude was so messed up.
Yeah. I just think it's like you've got. I mean, this clearly this isn't the full page that this sequence is on here, but you've got 2 pages of very little going on. I mean, literally, the dog pulls this guy up onto the rocks, and then they walk away. And the way he can stretch that into 2 absolutely engrossing pages is the mark of a great artist.
I mean, and again, it's story. It's
Yeah,
real story stuff that a lot of stories wouldn't take this long. It would be they probably would reveal it on that very next panel,
right.
but it's it's communicating what the animal's ambivalence about the man and the dog's non-ambivalence about the man. That moment takes 2 pages.
Yep. Um, one of the things I wanted to point out here that was great, he creates this architecture. They're on a bridge and they get into a fight with each other, the dog and the cat. And he establishes the architecture of the bridge as being these sort of diagonal girders in between the vertical girders. And then he uses that architecture to define panel borders. And so you get these moments in time of the dog attacking the cat and them tumbling through space and time within the architecture of the bridge that he defined. And I just think that's so smart and so amazing.
Well, and also just look at the dogs. I mean, the dog's whole outfit is wild as hell too. I mean,
Yeah,
they're all their armors are great, but I mean, just to communicate that they're around that it's like the dogs and cats are sitting inside this armature. It isn't just the same size as them. It is that they're like mech suits for the animals.
right. Right. This is the thing that all Iron Man suits don't do, is actually try to show you that it's like a living thing inside a shell of mechanized whatever.
Yep,
But
absolutely.
he does it on every single panel through some absolutely outrageous action with some of the most unwieldy, crazy designs possible. And that is why he draws slowly.
And that dog's ear in the last panel, just real quick. Just look at the dog's ear.
Again, just mastery of three-dimensional space, man. And
Yep.
that's the thing, like these armors, not only are they big and bulky and layered and whatever, they're all like weird rounded intersecting shapes, and he's constantly drawing them in perfect perspective. Just I, it's so hard to do. I cannot overstate how hard that is to do.
I mean, only a genius would even task themselves with this. A
Yeah,
genius or a madman or both.
yeah, a little of both. um this is another example of like, again, we're not seeing these people's faces because they're not about to die. And so we're going to focus on something else in the panel. And the way that he's able to like keep the faces, which are traditionally the things you most want to look at in art, and especially in including sequential art, keeps the faces out of the panel completely and yet creates an absolutely engrossing page where we know exactly what's going on. And he's asking us, pay attention to these rats that are, at this point we don't know exactly what they're doing, but they're clearly swarming on this engine and somehow either disassembling it, and all he's got to show you is these couple panels that are getting wonky, or assembling it. And now we're passing a controller back and forth. We've got a close up on the controller, the thumb hits the button. Immediately I think you've got a sensation of, oh shit, what happens next? Like, without having to read what anybody's saying, without having to see the people, he's created a very clear sequence of something's happening. I see it in these little details. Oh shit, they got a controller. This guy's going to use the controller. He hits the button. And it's like there's such a suspense of what's going to happen out of a otherwise very static and face-free page, which I just think is crazy.
Yep, I think that's perfectly articulated. The thing I'll say is my favorite thing about Quietly, the textures on the tiles, the little tick marks to show like the light hitting the seams in between things. If somebody said, "Get gun to your head, what's the thing Frank Quietly's the best? Seams. That's it. He sees the
Seams and folds.
seams. Yeah,
Yeah.
he sees the seams in everything. The place seams and cracks. He sees the seams and cracks where light can get in or do something so that he can make a little tick mark there that he's going to combine with this other one, then this other one to make it a 3D shape without doing a lot of cross hatching or some of the things we've talked about before.
Yeah. And here is what those rats are doing. And again, just an amazing use of pacing to create a sense of sort of horror and suspense, where it's like, this is a grotesque image in and of itself, but his absolute command of motion shows you that this rat is really quickly looking over at the other one. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the curl in the tail, the way the body is moved, like clearly this rat is responding to, by the way, This guy on the previous page is clearly pushing that controller in a specific direction. And
Oh,
so that's what you're
wow.
seeing the rat do, right?
Yeah, nice.
And now clearly the drill starts moving because he gives you the blur in the details on the drill, and the whole composition of like the, it's caterwampus, it's cocked at an angle going this way. So like everything is, oh my God, this rat is moving towards this rat, this gross, disgusting smile. And then you don't even have to see the gore happening to just be horrified by this last panel.
Mhm.
Amazing
Mhm.
stuff.
And at that size, the blood is just balls. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? Flying around. Great
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
All right, so now we're going to move to All Star Superman. In no particular order, this is not, from issue 1 to issue 12. This is just some of the greatest pieces of All Star Superman put together in no particular order. This page, I think, has a lot of what makes this great, this series great. I think if this series marks Frank Quitely's maturation at anything, We Three, I think, was clearly his maturation at portraying action. This is his maturation of acting. I think from this point on, his character's ability to act with both their faces and their bodies just reach an absolute second level. I mean, he's been good, but starting here, it goes over the top. And the clumsy Clark Kent, which we're going to talk about a lot here, is a great example of that. But his Lex Luthor is no less great. This maybe not being the perfect example of it, but like, just look at. I don't even know what to point at first. I mean, everything about it, like the position of the arms, the hands, the little bits of business of him pulling his welding mask up. Now he's pulling it off, but you could tell he's a little bit scared. He's got his arms cocked. He's crouched into a defensive position as Clark is starting to slip. And I mean, the body language here, best feet in the game also, but the body language here, he clearly got his feet caught in this cord, even though you never see his feet getting caught in that cord. And the way Lex is lunging, the way his hands are positioned, I cannot get over the body language acting throughout this entire series. So this is just one example of that.
Well, and like I said, my contribution to this page would be I love the cord sticking into the wall in the second panel. I love that and how it snakes around so you can kind of see what the deal is. And I love the when like you said, in the gutter, in between the fat gutter in the middle,
Mm,
that's when he supposedly gets his feet caught up and yanks this weapon basically away from Lex. And I love the fact that you see the files in Homeboy's hand in his right arm, and as his hand comes up, the folder opens facing the ground, so the papers can fly up, but they're still down because the folder is still the highest thing. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
just jazz like that, just simple stuff like that. Again, it's why comic if I just told myself that I wouldn't have to do stuff like that and people would think my comic art was good, I think I could do it tomorrow. But I just think you have to I think if you have to do this stuff. And the fact that when I'm seeing a panel in my head and I can't think of stuff like that, that means I can't see it.
Well, and I think what's even more impressive is you couldn't get this moment where he's using the flying papers and the flying folder to really sell this sense of motion if you didn't establish pages earlier that when Clark Kent comes into this interview that he's doing with Lex Luthor, he's got an armful of this shit. Like it'd be very easy for him to just have this notepad. And so if he just has the pencil and the notepad, this panel still works. This panel works without any of this shit in it. But with it in it, it works so much better. And so
Mhm.
you just have to make the decision of like, no, he's got an armful of files that he's carrying with him, just so you can get this amazing moment of everything going crazy.
Yeah, and I also think that there's this obviously we're going to get to more images, but again, the tick marks on the wall in the bottom panel. Look at that. Look at how much that space could have been nothing.
Yeah.
It could have been nothing, but due to those little tick marks, it looks like it's really there. It looks like it's not just a feel in a non-color. If you weren't coloring it, you would see that wall there.
It's interesting. I'm sure we can point it out as we go through. And it's something that you and I have talked about. But in general, the world of All Star Superman is kind of this stripped down world. Like all of the backgrounds that he does, except for some notable exceptions, which we will get to. Um, but all of the backgrounds, all the environments he creates are very simplified. It's like, I, I remember Grant Morrison talking about at the time that like he was approaching this story as sort of like an Apollonian myth. And in Greek mythology, Apollonian is sort of idealized, right? He's the god of the sun. It's like kind of with all the rough edges sanded off. And that's what
Mhm.
he communicated to Quitely. And I think Quitely suffuses that into the entire thing. I mean, there's also this amazing circle motif that keeps repeating throughout the story, which you're not really seeing here because we're in Lex Luthor's world. And so everything is going to be hard angles. But rather than give everything the sort of textures that he normally would, that we've seen him do a lot in previous works, in All Star Superman, in a hard angled world, it's just slabs. This workbench that he's got, and you're only seeing it here in the corner, but like it's just right angles. It's just a giant cube in the corner. And these walls, they're just flat blank walls. But when you create a world like that, you have to know that if you want it to look more than just empty space, at least get in there and put those little tick marks that Ed loves so much. Show that
Mhm.
it's like a weathered place made of concrete with just a few tick marks. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I mean, it's that is a white space with a couple of flecks,
Yeah.
and he has made it into a wall with your mind. I mean, that's the great part about comics, man.
Yeah.
A couple lines here or there makes the whole difference. Oh, I love this.
So this is much lauded, but I will say for the first time in comics history, Frank Quitely actually explored what it would take to make Superman and Clark Kent look like different people. And so one of the things he did, this was a concept illustration. This was him just exploring the character, never meant to be published. This is him just trying to get a handle on how am I going to draw this stuff. And he realized, well, if I got a big beefy Superman, how do I make that look like a less beefy Clark Kent? That's going to mean he needs to slouch. He needs to jut his hips forward. He needs to try to make that mass look like flab. And if he's Superman, he's got enough control of his body that he could do that. And here is that rendered, and it is glorious.
I mean, it really is great. And I think this might be the image that launched Tarantino's soliloquy
Kill
in
Bill.
Kill Bill volume 2, I guess 2.
Yeah.
Because it is like, okay, wait a minute, to look more like us, you gotta be a fat, slouchy piece of crap as I slouch and be fat. You know what I'm saying? It's like it is the thing that says that that's a little bit of him judging us, but it's
Sure.
also like if he's gonna be in the public eye, he has to be somebody that would never be seen as heroic. And so he does that to himself, and he does that for us so that he can have a life and still have so that he can have a life and still have his protection. That and he can have a life and we can still have his protection.
Right. Well, and I just need to point out too, here in a development drawing that he's just doing to get a feel for the character, Frank Whiteley cannot help himself but put in little tiny details like his tie is not quite aligned with his collar. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
he looks a little frumpy. And just look at the three-dimensionality of this tie, the way you can tell this knot is in 3 dimensions just by the way he chooses to render those lines. It's just unbelievable stuff.
Well, and the fact that he chooses suspenders, which is always, I'm sorry, it's not 1335. You have suspenders, you're a square, and nobody's gonna think you're Superman.
Yeah.
And real quick, last on this one. I love his approach to hair. I do find Clark Kent's hair a little chunky, but obviously it's just just a little concept drawing. But the underlighting, the fact that he chooses to have white from the back and the flesh, so-called white Caucasoid flesh tone underneath brown come up, and that defines Superman's face is so sick. It's such a choice. Like
Yeah,
that particular lighting scheme is such a great choice to show to kind of magnify how his cheekbones and other stuff could pop if he maybe changes his tongue position, his mouth doesn't have a little bit of a double chin thing, if he kind of like looks more, stands up straight, looks more regal,
for
the same
sure.
face can be stretched into a heroic shape with more it's just great. And just his hair is Superman is so beautiful. I mean, I used to draw the Punisher's hair like that back in the Will Portatio days in my notebook. I used to be
Yeah.
drawing it like that, and the little spit curl. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. I think this color treatment is more of how it works in Quitely's head, because this idea of sort of
Mm.
using the white of the paper as like highlights is something we saw on a couple of those covers that he did, and certainly in the Sandman Endless Night story. Um, so that sort of washy, almost like bleach bypass is what they call it when they do it in
Yeah.
film. But I think that's more of like how it works in his head. And I'd love to see a whole comic book colored in this fashion. I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So this is from when Superman returns from the Bizarro world. He's in a little homemade rocket and crash lands back on Earth. And Jesus Christ, look at the not only the acting of like these guys noticing and rushing over to help, and Superman standing up out of the wreckage and being like, hey, sorry about that. But like, look at the sense of motion and impact he's able to create. Like this thing flying in, not necessarily selling the speed, like that's mostly a color effect, but certainly setting the stage, like telling you where we're at. We're out in the middle of nowhere. These roughnecks are putting up a circus tent. But then these impacts, it's like I can hear and feel that boom, boom, boom as that thing tumbles through the fields. And then it's like I can almost, in this moment, I can hear the sizzle of the smoke, and I could hear the rabble as these guys, oh, what was it? We're gonna go help him out. It's like there's just something about his choices and the way he stages this that it's like it comes alive for me. Again, the
Oh,
acting.
agreed with all of that. And what my contribution to this would be, I love the storytelling from how the thing has come apart around him. It's like a craft that just barely encompassed his body, and it has now been obviously destroyed, but destroyed down like comically
Yeah,
down to the studs, like almost selling the fact that he got his powers back from the last episode. He's coming from the Bizarro world where he had like low powers or no powers,
right.
and even to have survived that landing, in the process of coming back, he got his powers back to not die in that landing.
Yeah.
And it's something you would, if you read the books, that's is communicated with that last panel. And if you're just looking at it, it's communicated.
Yeah, you're so right. Like the violence of these impacts is so necessary so that when they have him almost cartoonishly cheerful pop up at the end, it's like, oh, phew, he's got his powers back.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that cartoonishly cheerful. There is something about this series in particular, All Star Superman, and I think it's completely intentional, where Quitely almost channels like Disney animator into his work.
Mm.
There's a there's a bounciness, especially when he's drawing Superman, and there's a fluidity to the body language of Superman that feels almost of a piece with like classic Disney animation.
Dude, like I said, I have no contribution to this. Only thing I do gotta say, I am not liking the digital skies in this page. It's one
There's
thing I can look at, and I just don't know that I like that, dude.
there is a lot of highly digital coloring that happens throughout All Star Superman, which is an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Sorry, last thing on this page, but again, it's something that he does so well in All Star Superman. When you are depicting this very simplified, kind of stripped down world, the horizon line becomes an important piece of your drawing. And look at how the horizon line just gets slowly and slowly lower to get you ready for the heroic upshot of Superman. And
Wow.
there's just a rhythm to like, all right, it's almost halfway. Okay, it's about the same place. Oh, it's sinking lower. Oh, now it's at the bottom of the page. But hey, look, it's Superman. That in and of itself contributes to the feeling that he just stood up out of this wreckage.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, God,
That
it's good.
that manipulating the horizon line is a great call, and that he keeps it stable as it goes
Yes.
down, almost like he's booming down. Yep.
Yeah, it's not like it's rocking back and forth because again, Superman is strong and stable and reliable, and so your horizon is doing the same thing as Superman is reintroduced into the world.
Hmm.
And that is not over analysis. That is all intentional. I'm telling you. All right. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read this series, this is from the last issue. But again, in terms of acting, I don't even know if there's much I need to say here. This is like the one time in the entire book where you see Superman punch something that isn't like a giant monster. And I love that punch. I don't know what else there is to say. Just the whole lead up. Luthor reaching for something in his jacket. Superman moves so fast that from right here through the action, what's he doing? Well, he's clearly reaching for something. The whole panel is pulling you right into here, and then boop, you pop right over the gutter. Oh, that's what he was reaching for, but now it's in Superman's hand, and you follow that right through the action. Superman's holding him back as he's grabbing for it, and then faster than a speeding bullet, just a nice pop across the jaw that absolutely knocks him out cold. It's so simple. Like he's not doing much with these panels, but the acting is triumphant. It's so good.
Dude, and again, the drapery is part of the acting too. Like the
Yeah.
fact that that coat has like real mass and stuff, and it whips around as his head whips around, like his collar does that thing, and also like the heft of the smoke, even though again highly digital,
Yeah.
but like the smoke as it's at the people on the outskirts are the people who with their boom mics and the all the people who want to see what happened, they're coming in from the smoke as it dissipates.
Mm-hmm.
Love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also pretty good to like, I mean, this is the end of the thing. You're trying to deliver this book, 3 panels with no background, and then you draw kind of sketchy dudes
Yeah.
do some smoke. Nice.
Listen, he does that a lot here. All Star Superman is like the triumph of no background. So
Dude, I mean, I'm telling you, that's another reason why he's one of my heroes.
yeah.
Because you know what? He's a guy who we've said it time and time before. I think it's all due to the storytelling. And like you were talking about Grant Morrison's original conception of this, it's like, what if we were playing with our toys and we told the ultimate poignant story playing with our toys? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be Mega City fucking one, you
Well,
know?
and the thing that I will give him credit for too is it's a diegetic way to justify no backgrounds. It's not like he's just leaving it empty. It's like he does put a few wisps, which are, color holded in the coloring, but it's like he puts a few wisps of the smoke, but we don't have the image. Trust me on this one. He justifies the presence of the smoke in a previous
Yes.
page
Yes,
because
very much so.
this fight did encompass like Superman punching or Lex punching Superman through a subway underground where you see every little bit of it. But it's like by the
Yes.
time we get here, there have been things that have occurred that justify the smoke surrounding the entire action. So
And
it's not
and
just
even if
laziness.
even if it wasn't, even if that wasn't all the way the case, this is the emotional moment of the scene. Like, imagine a bunch of people right behind Lex as he's acting that moment of Superman taking that thing away from him. Just a bunch of people acting in that panel in the back. Would that serve it? Would a bunch
No,
of rubble serve it?
no.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
No.
you don't. That's a great point. Like, you don't want to be looking at a bunch of shit all around here. It's like you
Yeah.
just want the fluid, graceful motion of Lex is reaching for a weapon. Oh, Superman is here now, and he's keeping the weapon out of Lex's hand. Like, that's all
Mhm.
you need.
Yep.
So this is fun. I found some line work. So this series was famously digitally inked. So what Quitely did is he laid down as tight of lines in pencil as he possibly could, and the colorist just essentially upped the contrast and then colored over them. So he penciled this traditionally, and the cleanliness of these lines is something to behold. Like, they're, first of all, so delicate, and there is not a smudge. You got to figure he's lightboxing a bunch of shit. Like, I can't even imagine what he did to get to the point where these pages are this clean. Oh shit, there it is.
I mean, I'm loving. If you can you zoom in on that top panel where
Of
where this
course.
he hits, where he hits, and look at those. Look at the peep. Oh my god. Just boom. Like the shockwave, these things are farther away, so they only get their butts lifted up, but those things are closer, so they get flipped entirely.
Yes.
The library with its multiple columns,
Yeah.
that building and those slanted windows that's right, to the left of the library. I mean, come on, man. Come
Yeah.
on, man.
All these windows are open a little bit differently. Like, that's so funny to me. I mean, the other thing is too, like, look at what he's doing. Even like, these are just barely smudges, these people on the steps of the library, but like, you can tell those are people fleeing and falling in terror. And look
Mhm.
how small they are on that page. Like,
And look how much detritus, like, besides those bricks and stuff from the epicenter, as you track to the right, that cup by the Bizarro guy's hand and the piece of paper and the just all this stuff, little
well,
stuff.
and the use of shadows. Like, the shadows under here tell you that this stuff, no, it's up off the ground. Like, that's how big of an impact, or that's how hard the blast is, whatever it is. The use of shadows under the cars, just to sell, like you said, no, just the back is up because the shockwave has only reached that far. But over here, these, I mean, clearly that one's off the ground, but this guy's completely off the ground. This guy's completely off the ground. Like, there's such a sense of life and motion with so little in terms of, the actual line work.
And of course, those 4 bricks, the bricks in the foreground, I mean, to the right of the panel. Oh, I love that stuff. Look how crinkly and fat and juicy they look. They look like they were poured and then years of weather. I don't know, man. I guess I found my fetish, dude, doing these videos. Just the
Yeah.
weathering. I want to be a weatherer, Bill. I'm going to leave the industry and go join Marvel as a weatherer for belts and stuff.
Well, it's really funny because, like, he creates perspective with the quality of the line, where it's like, these
Yeah.
buildings in the far background, like behind the explosion, are all very ruled out, straight lines. But here in the far foreground, it's like these crinkly textured lines. And that's how because you're seeing more detail in the bricks that are up here close to you. I just want to appreciate as well, again, the acting and the body language, and the fact that, like, these are not just interchangeable, stock people. Like, they all have their own wardrobe, their own body language. They all have some business. This guy over here is hiding. This lady is trying to tend to this person on the stairs. This lady's freaking out because her son thinks it's Superman, so he's running towards danger. This guy is maybe thinking about stopping that kid, but is too scared to act. Like, and these are background figures that are barely there. Hmm.
To communicate that with so small, like that mom's face and all that jazz,
Yeah.
that just it's remarkable. This is a great page.
So this is the page immediately following the one that we just looked at. Again, I just want to zoom in so we could go from panel to panel. So, that kid runs towards what he thinks is Superman, but it turns out to be Bizarro, and Bizarro rises up all menacingly. So again, we said there are times when Quitely is going to skimp on backgrounds in All-Star Superman, but clearly not here. So Superman comes flying through. You get the wisp of the smoke showing and selling that motion. You see just enough of Superman behind this plane, this jet engine. And the impact of the jet engine is sold by all the detritus from the street. and the way that it's moving in relation to Superman moving with the jet, and the way that Bizarro's body language against the jet shows that he just got walloped off his feet. Like, what an amazing panel that is.
I mean, and then also though, the motion of it going, even though we're coming in that other way, it going out that way,
Mm-hmm.
on the other side of the panel, and we see the background actors and him alight landing in front of the kid. It's almost like we need because we're coming down from Bizarro's feet down to Superman's head.
Right. So the action of this first panel comes flying here, but then yeah, you come down through Bizarro and it scoops you, and this curve, right? Superman could have been hitting him with everything, but it's a choice to use again. The circle motif is coming back. Superman arrives to save the day, and so the harsh angles and straight lines of the columns and the steps turn into something circular and soft. But so Superman comes, that compositionally takes us back down through here. We place these people here to catch your eye. There's something to look at. And then it brings us over here. And even just the back and forth action of Superman comes in left to right to clear out the danger. And now he's moving back right to left to tell everybody to get to safety and to make sure that the kid's okay. And yeah,
Uh,
like you said, the body language of like, he's a light, you know, him just lightly touching down, the way the cape just lightly catches the breeze. It's been said a lot, but like this conception of Superman is so strong and so in control that he's never really tense. And so here, even as he's saving the day, he's non-threatening, he's light.
yep. Oh, and he grabs a look, and then you can see the storytelling of where that stuff ended up, slammed up over there.
And as we're talking about Superman, you know, looking tense or not looking tense, looking light, looking safe, looking relaxed. Two panels later, Quitely shows you what the opposite looks like. So it's like, again, that's clearly a choice because this guy could not be more tense and more, you know, flexing and ready to go. So just masterful stuff.
And just all the stuff flying out as he bursts out of his jet engine tomb, and there.
Yes. Yeah, and once again, all done without a speed line. It's all just using elements of the scene to convey the force and the motion and the speed. It's just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, for force cracks. That's what I would say. He shows force and he shows the cracks in the scenes. Force seams, force crack seams.
Force crack seams. I love that. This, I think, is just a great example of acting. Also, a great example of no backgrounds. But again, he justifies it because they're in a white room that's essentially a giant LED volume before we had such things. So
Mhm.
the walls turn to screens later in the scene. But the acting of him supporting himself against this beam and then full exertion, it's like I can feel this that Morrison scripts in there. Like
Yep.
he's pushing so hard, and you get to see it like he's breaking their system. And all you got to show is just this little bit of action here on the side of the panel, and it sells like nothing else.
You are now pushing against the equivalent of 200 quintillion tons. I love that. Where it's like, it just shows you it's not about strength anymore because he's too strong for anything. So
Right,
now we're into other realms in this story.
right. And actually, here's a great example. So this is where Quitely's Superman exerts himself, and you can see the tension, you could see the flexion, you could see that like there is force being applied from his feet up through his core, up into this arm. And so again, when he's not portraying him that way, when he is portraying him more relaxed, which is most of the time, it's all a conscious choice. I also love he keeps doing this thing where he'll set the horizon line at the bottom edge of the panel. And it just creates such interesting composition because it allows Superman in the foreground to be the biggest thing you see. And then the background, I mean, he does use perspective, this 1 point perspective that you see on all the machinery. But like as things shrink, they're also moving into the background. It's just a
Yeah.
simple way to create visual hierarchy.
Yep.
Again, a quiet moment where I think the storytelling is just stellar. Here's another example too of this very simplified world that everything is taking place in. This box couldn't be more simpler. Primary colors, beautifully rendered bow, middle of frame. Watch the action move down the middle of frame in these 5 stretched out panels. But you get just, and he makes use of the edge of frame just enough to justify it, where it's like, all right, here is a present. Here's a present sitting on a table. What's that going on back there? Oh, it's a giant window. And we're revealing the figures, and we see these flowers, which he picked in the previous issue, are still on the table. So we're in the same time period as the previous issue. And all ending, you go from close up, pull out. Here's the farthest look. Now we push back in, and we're back into a close up. Like, this is just gorgeous, smooth, simple storytelling.
And one thing you have noted many times, you're down with short cape Superman, and
Love it.
this is like so exemplary of that. And if you could zoom in on Homegirl's face in the fourth panel,
Yeah.
she that it's her being like that. You can see from the script. The script is being like, "Are you serious? I get to be like you for a whole day." Just her being this determination of like, "Yeah, I'm about to do this." Like that. That isn't a look of wonderment or gratefulness
No.
or in any of these other emotions. That is a serious, oh, I get to be like you. Check this out, yo. Like
No,
that's
it's
that look.
she, without the script, you could tell from the way she's looking at him. She's like, "You fucking shitting me right now? Like,
Yeah,
let's fucking go, man."
yeah. Like she's so excited to do that. That's the look when you go when you tell your girlfriend you want to do something super boring that costs a lot of money on Sunday morning. That's the look they get on their face.
Oh, well said. Well said. Oh, all right. Again, the storytelling, we're keeping everything in the middle of the panel. We're cascading down. Again, our great circle motif for Superman, broken only by the introduction of, I mean, and this really makes it obvious, but the square Earth. You're seeing the shadow of the square Earth here on Mars. But look at this storytelling where it's like he's turning away, so he just left the Sun Eater. We've got Jupiter, beautiful in the background. He's moving fast enough that, like, here you're barely seeing the curve of Jupiter, and here you can see it from side to side. So clearly, even though he's moved into close up on us, he's moved a shit ton of space in space. Now, I always take this to mean, because you would never see it this way, he's moving so fast that, like, space is warping, so you could see both Mars and the Earth here in the same panel. This also might just be a coloring mistake where this is supposed to be the moon and Earth. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, perfect perspective on Superman flying away from us. It's almost like from this panel to this panel, he zoomed past the camera, and now we're just trying to keep up with him. But then the camera catches up and starts to see, oh, there's something coming out from behind this planet. And then, boom, just smashed in the face by something he didn't see coming. Again, beautiful body language here, and the impact without having to use, speed lines, force lines, anything like that.
Yeah, and his cape, like the
Oh,
impact pushing his cape forward.
yeah. He, again, part of the acting in this series, masterful use of cape dynamics. He's great. He's
Oh
great
yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Um, and again, this is such a weird composition. Like, look at how tiny these two panels are in terms of, like, their verticality versus how horizontal they are. But there's just something that works where it's, again, that very rhythmic sense of we're moving from, like, this wide shot where he's coming at us, and damn, he traversed a lot of space. Now he's up in our grill, and now we push in even further where we're inside the thing that he's carrying. And now we take a moment, he's passed us completely, and we're just left here looking at the sun, which is kind of a pregnant image given what we're about to learn. And then, boom, we reset. There's that little bit of the sun. So it's like your focus never moves from the middle of these pages. You've got a circle telling you, look here in the middle of every single one of these panels. But you still get the sense of, like, rhythmic passage of time and motion through space, even as rigid as this is all laid out.
I do, yeah. I love the hugeness of what's depicted in the smallest panel. In
Yeah,
the that's there's something that's some big nuts cartooning right there, brother.
yeah. It's just so the way this is laid out and paced and like the choices he makes even in panel sizes and these like very fat open borders too, the gutters. There's
Yeah.
there's something that just feels like so cozy, like you feel taken care of by these pages. They're so I don't know, it's such an ephemeral thing, but it's like there's a I don't even know what it is. It's like the his use of space and layout almost reflects how you want Superman to make you feel. Like it's reliable and it's solid, but it's still playful and unexpected. Like it's
Well,
so
as a little
good.
bit of a so-called overanalysis, if you look, the top panels are surrounded by the white borders, and they are basically like this stable stack of images that depict this specific time frame of him grabbing up the dudes with his super new power, flying, saving them acknowledging that he's saving them using a new power he never had, and that central image of the sun. And then once we get out of that time frame, that motion, we're in the future here
Mm,
and that one is all the way extended to the sides.
yeah,
That one is able to break out of that because it's not in those moments anymore.
yeah, yeah,
That's I think that's him on purpose as well.
yeah.
Because
No,
we
I
talked about in the last episode his ability to like stack them like Polaroids on top of each other. This
right.
is a graduation of that sort of concept, I guess.
I would agree. I think you're right on that. Um, Again, this is in no particular order. So here's just another little bit of Clark Kent development sketch. But look how good that is. Just that capturing of the body language. Like you could tell from the beginning that was what Quitely wanted to focus on here was like capturing that acting.
Dude, I'm gonna just draw some comics that look about that level finished and call it a day. just,
I
just
mean, I'd
if you
read it.
did a good story, if you did a good story and the stuff looked like that, people would love it. They would, it'd be a movie in no time.
Yeah, and I do think it's commendable though that like clearly this is how he sketches, and so the fact that he takes it from there to that tight level of finish that we've been looking at is just nuts. So, I mean, this is gonna you can see the rhythm that they're creating in this book because I'm about to just say the same thing I've been saying, but like we keep our center of focus in this very rhythmic, moment to moment fashion in the middle of the page. But I love this little touch of we established the Superman figure small, flying towards the Daily Planet, and then almost that exact same figure is repeated right down here. And it gives you just enough information. There's a clear diagonal you're supposed to read on this page, right? I mean, he's
Mhm.
telling you from the first panel, diagonal. Everything is pointing down into the center. And then all the motion on this page is like read left to right, go this way, this way. And when you do that, it reveals this clever little Easter egg, which is Superman swooping down towards this scene of almost chaos. And
Mhm.
I just fucking love it, man. Like
Dude.
it's so clean, but it's so good. It's so good.
And Perry White's big bride of Chucky ass head with his dumb 50s part. It's perfect.
It
He's
is.
perfect looking.
And God, it's just, I mean, but look at this though. It's like read on a diagonal, face to face to face, read on a diagonal, out down to this dog, and oh yeah, look at what's waiting for you at the end of that diagonal. Oh,
Mhm.
come on, Frank.
Dude, yep. And he's
Anyway,
gonna save a kid from the truck. And dude, and
well
he's and
now,
yeah, oh god, now we talking about dude, what's his name? George Lipton asking Clark Kent, now this scene from your life where you're acting like a bumpkin, even though you're the most graceful man in the world. How what were you thinking about? Stanislavski method? Perhaps a little bit of a, yeah, what was he thinking about here?
I I don't know, man, but so this is literally the next page after what we just looked at, where Clark Kent is fired in three, two, gonna save this kid and this dog. One, hold the presses. He comes in fixing his tie. Everybody who knows anything about Superman knows what that means. And
Mhm.
the coup de grace, we're going to trip over Cat Grant's bag. We're going to lose our eyeglasses. We're going to drop our folder. We're going to stand up. We're going to knock the coffee out of Steve Lombard's hand, but we're going to catch it on its way down because we're Superman. And we're going to continue in. And you know what? That Steve Lombard bit, just because I don't like him and want to make him look stupid, but that was maybe a little bit too slick. So here in the last panel, I'm going to go ahead and slip on that piece of paper that I was stepping on here. It's like, you see what's going on through his head. You see the choices that he's making as an actor in the moment. And I just love the fact that, like, because Steve Lombard's a dick, like, he's got to take just a moment to get over on him a little bit. Like, God,
Just a little bit.
just
Yeah,
a
dude,
little
and
bit.
look at the kid and the dog. The kid has a wonder look on his face, like he can't quite. He's like, "Oh man, that's crazy," and the dog looks so happy, like, "Ah man, it's awesome."
And
And Perry White looks so mad, and Lois looks like, "Man, this fool." And then Jimmy is genuinely concerned because he loves Clark and he thinks Clark is a super cool guy.
it's like, oh, Mr. Kent. And she's like, this happens 3 times a week. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, it's all there, man. And what's great about this though is, like, you don't see the Superman save. So you as yourself have to put together in your head that in that moment between when Perry White said 2 and 1, Superman grabbed that kid, saved him from the truck, and showed up at the Daily Planet. But just in case you're not quite putting it together, again, we establish she's carrying these papers, and the papers go flying to sell this sense of motion. And here, back out on the street, where the panel border is different than here in this scene, the papers are still settling, still falling down to the ground. And it's like, it almost sells that this entire page is just one motion with what he did back here on the street.
Man.
Oh,
I mean, and all that figure drawing also, by the way, a lot of amateur artists, myself, bro, draw me a dude 7 times. Dude, I don't want to draw anything 7 times for one panel. 7 times for one panel and different acting. It ain't even the
well,
same thing. It's
no,
like,
and this is what I mean. By the way, this is like straight out of Disney animation. Like, this
mm-hmm,
looks like something that might have been drawn for, like, Beauty and the Beast. I
mm-hmm.
mean, that influence is very, very strong throughout this entire series.
And but though it's like he went to a Disney school and then they kicked him out because he was drawing people like he wanted to draw them and he wasn't doing like the house style or whatever. And he was just took all those super skills to this place where he could have a total control.
That's fair. No, that's fair. Um, so here's another. I mean, this is a famous cover. Him over Jonathan Kent's grave. It's cool to look at the pencils because you can kind of see. You could see some of what he's erased. You can also see he laid in this blue line, sort of, what would you call that? Like, not triangulation, but he essentially dissected the page up. He put the center of focus there, so he knew he didn't draw anything there, but he wanted to know where the center of focus for your eye was going to be. And then he drew around it because you can see the diagonal from where Superman's looking goes right down to the horizon line, which means you can then move either up here or over here to Crypto. It's like he's doing a lot to make sure that your eye is, it's that idea of being secure and taken care of. I think comes from this. It's like he's not putting things in odd places. He wants to put things in very comfortable positions for your eyes. So even just the relationship of all these elements, there's no overlap between him, the moon, Crypto, the headstone. They're all their own isolated pieces of the drawing, and it's just about arranging them in this very comfortable round composition where just little bits, the direction of his gaze, the direction of Crypto's gaze, everything just works to kind of keep you nice and safe in this composition. I don't know, man. It's just,
Well,
people
I
don't
like
do
how
work like this.
Dude, I like how the all the blades of grass are pointing at Kent's gravestone too.
Yep.
It's like there's no way you could like if you were thinking about what's Superman thinking about? Why is the dog looking up? The moon looks cool. Look at those branches. Look at that grass. Oh, there's Jonathan Kent's thing. If you were that oblivious, you would eventually get there to the fact that that's what that is.
I mean, now that you say that, it's almost every element. You've got branches pointing you down there. You've got both of their capes and the wind pointing you
Hmm.
there. You,
Hmm.
like I said, you've got this diagonal where even if you start at Superman, it's like you got to come down this diagonal, and it ends at his gravestone. And yeah,
Yeah,
and
like
I
you were
mean,
saying, the branches to the moon, to the figures, to the stone make a perfect circle. Like
yeah,
you're right about that.
and even like he drew every blade of grass, dude. He drew every blade of
I mean,
grass.
and that's like a real lot. Like I wasn't trying to comment on that because I know we've been so gushing on the stuff that like a lot of comic fans have trained themselves to not give a damn about that because
Right.
so many of your frankly favorite artists don't give a damn about that and don't do a good job of that, and it's all smoke around the feet all the time. For a
Yeah.
lot of y'all's favorite guys, that's what they do. But with this dude, it's like, and I was thinking it before, and it sounded so dumb in my mind, and I'm gonna say it again, and it's equally dumb. I think in Frank Quitely's mind, in an image, some grass can be as important as Superman, or a
Sure.
brick can be as important as Perry White, or whatever. You know, I think he thinks of it as if I don't draw this grass or this glass or this rubble or these cars or this stadium or this parking lot or whatever, I won't get across the emotionality I'm trying to get across. So I like almost like like as a reflex, I have to make it as grounded as possible so I can get across this emotion so it could be in our real world and not just this thing that I know it is, which is meticulously placed lines that our minds are forcing into these shapes that represent humanity. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at this stuff because this is such a definition, all this work is such a definition of like what I love and appreciate in comic book art. It leaves me a little bit like, what do people not see, or what do they see in this that I'm not getting? Because it is really polarizing. Like some people just don't like Frank Quitely's artwork. And I just don't understand that on such an incredible level. Like I can't put myself in that headspace to look at all the stuff we've been looking at and like not appreciate it on the level that we're clearly appreciating it.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody could because but you know what I think it is? I think there are people who when we've diagnosed it, there's people who go to comics to look at pretty pictures, and there's people
Mm,
that go to comics to get story. And I think there are definitely people who want to see stories full of people that are pretty pictures. But
mm,
I don't know how many people are there that'll go, look, man, if Jeff Darrow, Frank Quitely, and let's say somebody else that don't, they have these super set of skills, but it ain't like, oh, I'm just gonna go look at that for like, I mean, Jeff Darrow has so detailed that a lot of people look at his stuff for pleasure, especially a lot of cartoonists. But just these guys that have this level of storytelling in every single image, those guys are big brands, but they are smaller than a guy who just knows how to put those muscles on Batman. Yeah. You
right,
know what I mean? That
right.
those guys always get over. You know, it's always some genius person that isn't as appealing as the guy who just speaks in these clipped forward sentences and gives you a steely gaze. And I'm just living, man. Those guys will always get over because there's something clear about that. But these guys that take all this thought, I guess we're there for us to appreciate.
I guess so. This page, there's not much more to say than what we've been saying. And again, I just want to point out that like clearly Morrison and Quitely were trying to create this sense of rhythm. It's not even sameness because I don't think anything here feels redundant, but it's like, again, we're leading through time and space, middle of the page. Every element is leading you back there. All these compositions are just stable, right? There's nothing weird going on, except in the moments where we do have villains like these guys. Now, suddenly, we're introducing strong angles where the smoke is moving at a diagonal. It all leads your eye where you want it to go. Like you very clearly read this page. down the middle over here, follow the smoke to Superman, follow Superman and the smoke back through this way, and the motion of his cape whipping into the next page. Like, it's very clear and easy to read. But the things that he's doing in the margins of that easy, clear and easy to read. Again, look at the background work that's happening. Look at the impact work that's happening. Look at the acting from people. These people are losing their hats. Like,
I
oh,
love that part. Yeah, and there is a tilt to everything. If you really look at it, the
mm-hmm.
buildings in the second panel even are tilting. The buildings in the first panel are tilting. The buildings in the third panel are tilting because things are off kilter. People, these guys have come and beat up. They slammed Superman to the moon so hard that it damaged the moon, as you can see from his dialogue at the bottom. Like, what have you done to the moon? You know, you've broken the moon. He's like, and his face is bloody. He's got like a little mustache goatee made of blood there from these
Yeah.
dudes slamming him around. It's like everything's off kilter in this page, and that's why everything's off kilter in this page.
No, that's a great point. Like, we've looked at so much of this stuff and we've noted how it's like, oh, these great minimal, like horizontal and vertical lines. And now we come to this page and there is not a straight horizontal or vertical line to be found. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So this is from that same issue. This is mostly just here to marvel at the level of detail that Quitely puts in to a book that we've also taken to task for being light on backgrounds. But there is a volcano that's about to destroy this South Pacific island. But these Kryptonians have been tunneling under the volcano. They emerge from underground. The volcano is collapsing, but they stay floating in the air. And we see that they have dug tunnels to cause the volcano to collapse into concentric craters. And dear God, the sheer amount of drawing that's happening in this page from this
The
two
sheer amount
page.
of conceiving
Oh my goodness.
conceiving of this page. And I'm not even talking about Grant like conceiving of it. I'm just talking about, okay, they go like, there's, okay, even if you go panel one, slim panel across the top, there's a bunch of people trying to escape a volcano thing. Okay, second panel, a guy pulling his lady love out of a hole in the ground. I guess it's inside the volcano. Third panel, they're like embracing as like the stuff collapses. Fourth panel, you see that that's collapsed. Fifth panel, they're looking down and they're going to say some stuff. If you just wrote that in the script, like when you're sitting down to draw it, what do you do? What do you pop quiz, hot shot? What do you
Oh,
do?
oh. I'm telling you. I mean, like, for as much detail and crazy shit as is in here, look at all these people in the foreground. It's still so readable because it's like all your perspective and your motion just leads you back to this one gigantic ass thing that's popping up over your horizon line. Again, in this
Mm-hmm.
book, horizon line is very important. And its shape just leads you all. I mean, even just like whatever this is, I can't quite tell. It's a little bit pixelated, but just this foliage in the foreground, the angles on this burned out building and everything. Once you come down to it, come down here, right into the cape and the smoke. And we're in these guys. And once you've seen these guys, okay, come down here. Look, there's lava. Follow the lava up to them. And they're looking at each other. So we come up to them. It's just a nice little contained moment. And we come down from them. And oh, we're coming down right here. So let's take the coastline to lead you right into them. And what are they looking at? It's another big circle. So go around the circle and follow this line out the panel. What does that do? Takes you right into his shoulder, which takes you right to her face, which takes you right to his face. And then we're going to move on. I mean, it's like, what a
Dude,
magnificent piece of composition.
dude, it's just masterful and really all about storytelling. Like we've been pounding into the ground because it's totally true. I don't think any of this is for like, it'd be so cool. It'd be so cool if this.
Right.
I think he gets jazzed. Well, wouldn't it be cool if I communicated this utterly perfectly? Where they don't even need these. I think he's got a real thing about like I don't even give me the script so I can draw it. But after that, you don't need the script anymore, really, because they can see everything that happened because I drew it.
100%. I mean, any one of these books, you don't need the dialogue to appreciate exactly what's going on. So again, his pencils. This is where Jimmy Olsen has transformed into Doomsday and fights Superman and fights him to a standstill. And now he turns back into regular Jimmy Olsen. The only thing I want to point out here, and I don't know if this was in the script or not, but this is the moment that the fight stops and the collapsed Daily Planet letters spell yield, Yield.
Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, man, but, can you zoom in a little bit on the top panel? 'Cause
Of
I
course.
wanna see some of those famous windows, baby.
Yeah.
Look at that famous window
I mean, look
action
at yeah,
there.
look at the three like on the edge of this frame, the three dimensionality, and you could see he laid this all out meticulously with the blue line on the letters, on the windows, on the ledge, the way that this I don't know if it's blood or liquid is pooling on the ledge, the way he's
Mhm,
drawing the cracks in the window in perspective, the way you see the edge of the window that's shattered in perspective. I mean,
mhm.
come on, man.
And you could and the thing is, you know, tips from a loser, you could fudge any of this. You could fudge any of this and nobody would really notice. You could fudge almost any of this. If you had these great camera angles and you couldn't draw quite as good as this, yes, part of it would look bad, but your dynamism would still pop. People
Right.
could still see that you were a cartoonist who was thinking, but he can draw all of the stuff that he conceives of, which is why he's one of the greats. Almost anybody can conceive of a great panel angle. Ooh, worm's eye view from a such and such and such, and then you execute it, and it looks like ass.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's also worth noting, like clearly the vanishing point here is Jimmy Olsen's face, right? But like
Mm,
all of these fucking letters are in 3D perspective going to that vanishing point. Like it doesn't need to be that perfect. Are you shitting me? Like you're even seeing the hint of a shadow underneath with the line weight because it's sitting here on the ground. And the fact that like obviously the perspective is going to work different on the front of the letter versus the back of the letter, where you also see these studs that are the connecting points where it was attached to the globe. Like,
oh man.
come
Oh,
on.
and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that when you the title of this, Ass Man. I
this
mean,
is
just the sense of humor, dude.
this is where I wish Ron was on the podcast with us because he would love that. He would love that. All right. So, I mean, there's I probably pulled too much All-Star Superman. We can go on this forever, but we should move on to the next series. But just worth appreciating. Again, just the acting, the sense of motion here in the capes. You know, he just
And
something
that
got
third panel, look at that third panel. I mean, I love the acting in the other panels, but that third panel has like Dementors and stuff coming out of the sky to ravage the world. I mean, no, I'm sorry, the fourth panel has Dementors coming out of the sky to ravage stuff, and just the perspective going off into the distance. It's just that's a panel for your ass as far as storytelling.
two things to point out. I love Crypto here huddled behind Superman as the wind kicks up so much. Um, but look at this. So this beast that comes on the in the bottom panel is called the Chronovore, and it eats time. So what does Quietly do? We start with a leg of beef that you might see in a butcher shop, move to skeleton cows, move to desiccated cows, moving all the way to healthy cows running away from it.
It's crazy.
So
It
fucking
eats
good, man.
time.
Oh, all right. We could go all day. This is from the same issue. Again, the acting. I This is one of my favorite panels. It's this small panel in a very quiet moment, but again, the composition of the fact that he's walking up this snow-covered hill, the grace in the cape, sort of the resoluteness of his stride without coming
Yeah.
across as being threatening, like,
Mhm.
oh, it's just
Well,
pure fucking drawing.
dude, I mean, everybody who thinks they can draw a profile and place that off leg, the leg that's behind the body. Just place it. Place it correctly. 10 times to 10 different places and talk to me about drawing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's so many people who think so 2D. There are brilliant superstar artists that think super 2D
Yeah.
in the comic book space.
I mean, this is one of the great all-time images.
I
Don't
mean,
have to
I like that you pulled this version of it though, because I love the. I mean, I'm telling you, like, if some of the black and white zines ever got somebody this talented to draw for them, it could bring black and white zines back in a certain way, especially if you give them just maybe a tiny bit more black than Frank Quietly would use. But I'm just looking at instructive in my own practice, like the lightness of line on figures and
Mm,
then the darkness of certain other stuff in black and white. It can really pop. I was reading Kabuki back when Homeboy was doing them as
yeah.
like basically like just very cheap black and white books for Caliber Comics, I think it was. And man, that was some great stuff. Just so seeing Frank Quietly playing around with this, I would love to see a Frank Quietly black and white just extravaganza book.
I also just have to point out, like, this may have been traced, but it certainly wasn't photostated. Like, it wasn't like they just took it and treated it in Photoshop. This
Mm.
dude drew the Earth, not only the continent of North America and a bit of South America, but all of the fucking weather patterns. Like, he drew
Mhm.
all that.
Yeah, dude.
And it
Yeah,
kind of
man.
sucks because when they get it into color, they treat it in such a way that it looks like it might as well have been just ripped from a
Right.
photo or something. But he
Right.
drew it. That's amazing.
Well, at least we know, and just the dirt kicking up as she kicks her heel up to be doing that Doris Day thing or whatever.
Again, using environment to sell motion. I
Yep.
just he uses it better than anybody. This is another one of my favorite pages of barely anything happening, but it's still just glorious. This snowstorm with her kind of tucked away in the fortress, and then the reverse angle as she's taking a shower. Real sexy look at Lois Lane between these two panels without being in any way inappropriate, which is kind of
Mhm.
a nice achievement on his part. And then just again the acting, like you could see there's a little bit of awkwardness between them because this isn't an issue where he revealed himself as Clark Kent and she didn't believe him, and they're both kind of trying to feel each other out at this point. And it's like
Mhm.
you feel it in the body language there. God, another one of my favorite pages. I can keep doing this, but again,
Well,
just
the Sun Eater page though is a bad boy.
I mean the the body language, just the every image of Superman. He's very proud to show her what he has here, and he's
Mhm.
grabbing up this hammer to smash a sun. But again, look at just how gentle and graceful and fluid that figure is.
Mhm.
Holding on to his cape a little bit because he's still got a little bit of nervousness. They're having this weird moment between them. In the script, he's going, "Sons, what else?" When she asks him what he feeds the Sun Eater. And there is just something like goofy and cartoonish and boisterous about everything about this panel. And then the joy with which he's feeding the Sun
I
Eater, these
love
little
that one.
baby
That's my
suns.
jam. That's my
It's
jam
so
right there.
good, man. Look
Look
at
at
the
look, even his face. Like I mean, it's so small, but he's having a good time, and just the body language. Even if you couldn't see his face, for some reason something was covering his face, some smoke or some detritus or something. His hands and his stride and his kind of like,
oh,
yeah, girlfriend, look at this.
and yes to all that. And again, this cape, just the subtle motion, like you feel that gentle wave of his arm just in the way that his body's catching his cape.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Oh man. Classic four panel origin plus this. I only show this page because you need to see what Superman flying over the sun looks like in pencil.
Oh
So
wow,
look at this. The coloring almost ruins it.
wow.
I don't even know what to say about it other than to just like look at the perspective he's able to achieve just by the frequency with which he's overlapping these sunspots. And it feels like it goes on into forever.
Man, that is really fresh, man. And I like his treatment of the Superman logo. I've seen certain artists where what they'll do is like they'll get like a Photoshop version of it and just sort of stretch it around. And I'm not saying that anybody should be above or below doing that, but I just believe that his version of the symbol, however he's doing it, he always really takes into account the volume of Homeboy's chest and everything to make it be good.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I think the in a lot of ways, like the digital inking and the color does a disservice. That's a beautiful drawing of Superman. It just really is.
Yeah, the coloring kind of covers up some of the emotionality in his face.
Yeah. Hmm. All right. So just more acting stuff, more body acting stuff. Again, this is a great example of like this very simplistic world. Like this is Superman's vault where he keeps all these dangerous weapons, but it's all just stuff standing on giant rectangles, essentially. Um,
Well, it's a museum of death, yeah.
yeah, basically. But again, even within this is so simplistic, like it's just basic perspective, and then nope, I'm going to hit you with the circular door that retracts into the wall and you can see every piece of it and it works perfectly in perspective. Like,
Man,
come
I mean,
on.
even when he's playing, I mean, that's you know what drawing with Frank Quietly is probably like like if he's just jamming with his friends, drawing on a napkin or something in the pub or something, and you're just drawing dirty faces and whatever. I just really think it's like roughhousing with Shaq. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like his simplest drawing would be 3D, have emotion to it, have to have perfect shadows and be complete. And yours would be whack as hell.
I think that's the thing. I mean, you said it in our last episode, but like so much of drawing is just about seeing, and I think that he just
Mm,
cannot help but see with perspective, with mechanical accuracy, with
mm.
this level of detail.
Yeah, I think so too. Because that this could be so much more iconographic. It is iconic, but I'm saying it could
Sure.
be iconographic, as in flat as hell. You know what I'm saying? Being more like a lithograph or like a carving or something where or not a carving, but maybe like just some sort of flat depiction of this, but this isn't flat. You can see the depth of him trying to like, and what is he even doing? This is so symbolic too. Like
Yeah.
it's got real heft, and he's symbolically turning some weird gear to restart the sun. It's such an esoteric concept.
It's what's interesting too about this is like he's pulling in a bunch of like okay, so like this gear and even what he's standing on almost look like kabbalistic, like from Kabbalah, like
Mm,
tarot cards or something. But then what he's in looks like an artificial heart. But then all this stuff in the background looks like 1950s sci-fi nonsense. And then
hmm.
like the posture that he's in, it looks like this is a riff on some image that already exists, but it's not. Like it's vaguely Soviet a little bit, but like
Vaguely Soviet, yeah, vaguely Soviet and even Polish. You know what I'm saying? When they're making
right,
like the big giant god statues that are doing something physical.
right. But yeah, it just like it blends all these things together to create its own just kind of timeless iconic image. Mm.
So dope.
All right, now we're to Batman.
Well, I just wanted to jump in here on this part. I do love the fact that he does think about all the ways that the costumes fit together. If that's him being like, I know that this material on the boots is felt, or the and on the gloves is leather. I don't know. I don't know if that's as deep as he goes. I know he does render different types of stuff different ways, so maybe he's thinking that deep. But I know for a fact he's always thinking about how everything connects, and that's by far the most important part of designing for character designs for comics and stuff. He's always trying to figure out where it connects. What does this do when your arm goes up? How does it bunch when you do this? And I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah. No, this is great just as a piece of concept art. Um, all right, so I mean, there's again so much to say. he does some similar stuff to All-Star Superman, but in a lot of ways he's doing a completely different type of storytelling. And whereas All-Star Superman was very rhythmic and like I was saying, it just made you feel taken care of. This Batman stuff is kind of anything but, right? So
Mm-hmm.
while you are still reading these stretched panels, they go across the entire page, they're stacked on top of each other, and your eye is meant to stay in the middle. What's happening around that is very kind of uncanny. Like there's no sense of the camera moving. Sometimes you're not even exactly sure what angle you're looking at. Like in All-Star Superman, you'd be very clear that, like, all right, in a composition like this, the camera might start here, push in, pull out, pull out. Here, it's like the camera cuts a couple times. It stays kind of at the same level, but is just maybe kind of looking side to side. It's almost like you're trapped. And this is maybe a little bit of an over analysis, but in All-Star Superman, where it feels like the camera moves in very smooth, deliberate ways, in these Batman and Robin stories, it feels like you're kind of trapped, and the camera is like your point of view as you're trying to figure out where to go or how to get out. And there's never
Mm-hmm.
quite a way to do that. And I don't know,
Yeah.
it's
No,
interesting.
I concur that that's the feeling of this. Just the whole like you're bonding a mask to somebody's face. That's very well communicated in this. It's like just put this hot ass plastic on your face, and now that's your new face, bud. And this is
Mm,
you're in my cult. And just the tools drawn in perfect perspective. It's just it's all there. But you can also see that this is him trying to be like, look, man, all right, I got to make $1.01 in this business. So I'm a do what I need to do. And like, this is him trying to jam, and it's
yeah.
still so beautiful.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot looser in a lot of ways, but still quite tight. I also just want to point out the way he's tied to this table is like functional. Like if he tries to raise his arms or legs, it's going to choke him. And again, there's no reason to do that. But it is way more interesting than just like being tied spread eagle or something. Like it's and in a lot of ways it's way more disturbing.
I think that's the key point.
Yeah. So again, sort of moment to moment, action scene, so different than All-Star Superman, and even, I think way more evolved than what we saw him do on something like The Authority. Um, Maybe similar to We Three, but just taking it into a little bit less of a polished place. But yeah, so still so clear and so fun to read. These guys are ready to fight. Batman picks up the fire extinguisher, knocks him in the face, kicks this guy who's coming in from the left. He gets up off the ground. He's on his feet. Now he's here. Kicks him back, squirts him with the fire extinguisher. That fight scene is done in 4 panels, and now he's got to find Robin. But
Mm-hmm.
again, nothing about those 4 panels is like stock or lazy. It's so fun to read.
Yep. And again, if there was a whole bunch more background, would this be better?
Mm-hmm.
No. So you might as well just do what you got to do. Get it done. Let's go.
Let the colorists take care of that.
Yeah.
Um,
Your favorite big head Robin. You love this stuff.
I
And this is a
love
different Robin than the one he drew earlier for the video.
correct. Yeah, I love me some Damian Wayne Robin. And the way that Quitely draws him, he's like a lollipop head, but he's so cute. It like emphasizes he's very cute, and then he just does some absolutely horrific shit, which I think is just a great contrast. This I think is great though, because again, there's shades of All-Star Superman in the layout where it's like we're going moment to moment. The eyes open. Where am I? Little bits of the world swimming into view. Reverse angle. Now it's a point of view from Robin. But then suddenly we're over here in some kind of weird, I don't know whose point of view this is. It's just the point of view from next to the razor that's on the table. And so it's like you think you're in, okay, I get what we're looking at, and then boom, drill, razor, some blood, scared person. Like, oh shit, you just dropped me right in there. Like,
Dude,
it,
saws are my weakness. Every time I see a damn saw, I used to know a guy with a couple missing fingers from his table saw accident, and I was just like, I was just thinking about beautiful little sausages, baby. Every time I see a saw, I'm like, yeah,
uh,
I get creeped out about it. But yeah, oh, you can go on to the next slide.
all right.
Basically, I love Damian Wayne fighting. I love how they depict it ever since Frank quietly kind of laid it down. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
To be clear, this is the first time that you see Damian Wayne, Batman's son, as Robin. And the first three issues were drawn by Frank Quitely, so he really kind of established the visual language of that. There's something about this, and I don't know that other artists do it as well, but you understand how this scrawny little 10-year-old kid can hold his own in a fight. And right here is a great example. He kicks he kicks this lady's knee, getting her to drop her cane, at which point he grabs her pinky and her thumb, twists as he kicks her in the face, and then compound fractures her wrist. And it's like, you understand that's a complicated series of events, and you understand exactly what's going on in like stomach churning detail the way Quitely renders that.
Yeah, and I love just the simple storytelling of Batman in the bottom two panels where he's just like, wrapping these guys up, wrap them up in a comic book ball of wrapped up guys. You know, I mean, there's something to depicting the classic comic book wrap up of the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. There is a lot of influence, and I think Morrison copped to it, of like the Adam West, Burt Ward Batman 66 series
Hmm.
in this Batman and Robin. And I think you're exactly right. Things like hog tying the bad guys as the cops come in at the last minute and they're like, what's going on here?
Hmm.
This is interesting. So, to your point, a lot of negative space here, letting the colorists do a lot of work. But what's important? The flying Batmobile and this old jalopy that little Mr. Toad is trying to get away in. And just
Yep.
look at
And
how
it's off
gorgeous.
the ground, all four wheels off the ground. As the cartoonist kayfabe guys have said, as Frank Miller has said, you do cartooning with a car, all four wheels off the ground.
Yes, sir. I think it's just worth pointing out some of that sleekness that he really established the visual language of in We Three is imported into the Batmobile here. So again, there's not a straight line on this car, just nothing but overlapping, pristine, metal plates. And then here, a perfectly rendered jalopy, but again, still in the Frank Quitely style. That fetishization of machinery through the front grille. I mean, everything here is just humming.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think it's interesting, again, to further emphasize the sense of motion and the perspective, choosing this rounded shape for the ground. It almost
With
feels
the
like you're looking at,
shadows. Yeah.
yeah, you can see the shadows and the way that he renders those shadows, but it almost feels like this is a fisheye lens or something because there's not a straight perspective line, which is the sort of thing he would do in All-Star Superman. The horizon was always very straight, not so in a book like this.
Yeah, Batman's world, there's yeah, it isn't round. It's rounded off and weirdly curvilinear. It isn't stable.
Yeah, exactly. Just some more excellent fight scenes. I think, like we said, if All Star Superman was him perfecting his acting, this might be him perfecting his fight scenes. Um, Unbelievable stuff here.
Just he's tied to the chair and he gets out. Just the power that he exerts in the seconds as he gets out and then he just gives him that big wallop. Bow, bow, bow,
Well,
you know.
and again, it's great because you're emphasizing what he can do as this well-trained child. It's not like he's just punching somebody in the face and knocking him out. It's like
Hmm.
he escapes, he grabs this tool using his quickness and his balance. he takes it up to face level and then whacks these two people across the face with this fucking giant drill. And now he's using the drills like they're nunchucks, right? So now he's just
Yeah.
cracking people in the face with these drills, which is so much, it makes so much more sense than just having him do kick flips and shit. It's like
Right. Right.
he's fighting like he should be as a 10-year-old. And then as like the fat man who he already knocked down gets up off the ground, he uses the momentum. Look at this chair. It's on all four legs. He gets it up on two legs. Now it's almost coming all the way back to the ground, but Professor Pig here is using the upturned leg to get leverage to stand up. And so now Robin redirects that and uses all that momentum to kick dude in the face. And you see now the chair is standing right back up. So it's just like the planning to take all that into account, right? Like it's not just cool images of this kid throwing kick flips. Like there's a
No.
logic to everything.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's down even down to the scripting too, I bet, because it's like they didn't say, "Oh, well, Robin just beats the hell out of everybody." I bet you it's definitely meticulously put in there. Like, no, this Robin, the whole point of this book is that Batman fights at a more acrobatic and affable way than Batman ever did, and Robin is 100 times more vicious than maybe any depiction of Batman you've ever seen.
Right.
So now you've got this it's like if Batman is good cop, that's your ass. That's what this whole book is trying to say.
Yeah. I also just think it's so hard to draw a kid and consistently make them look like a kid
Mhm.
while they're in action.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he does it. I mean, maybe it is just down to that lollipop head, which I freaking love, but like the proportions are never in question. His size in relation to the rest of these people is never off. Like, this is a tiny little kid who's beating the shit out of these people. And like, you never question that reality.
Nope, not for
Oh,
one
man.
second. Yeah, dude.
This is just another great example of the rhythm of these fight scenes. So much looser, so much, more off kilter, off balance than what we saw in All Star Superman. Um,
Mhm.
and yet not quite as insane as the stuff we're seeing in We Three. Like this still, there's a plausibility to all the action scenes, which we kind of got into with that last Robin scene as well. So it's like you're not moving through the gutters of panels the way that the cat did in We Three, but there is still a balletic grace to Batman in contrast to the people he's fighting. And
And
so it's
just
like, yeah.
just real quick, that technique of laying the images out, see how they overlap, which ones overlap with each other, what is the reason, what's trying to be communicated. There's something about like it's almost like the each of them as these slap shots that somebody has laid out, and it's like,
Mm.
was this how the fight went? Let me lay this out. No, no, move this one over there. Okay, that's what happened. You know what I'm saying? Trying to piece it together. You know what I mean?
Well, it is interesting because you can see that like these four at the top are really the same sequence of events. I mean, Batman hits two people, he's flipping. Robin, meanwhile, is going off panel. Batman is hitting people as he's in the air. He lands on this guy as he throws a shuriken into this guy's armpit. And it's almost like a little bit disconnected, but still connected. Robin's over here kicking this guy in the face. And then this moment of impact with Batman, that gets, that's not overlapping anything. That gets its own little section. And then
Mhm.
meanwhile, you've got this hubcap. I can't tell. Yeah, it is. The hubcap kind of carries you from here down to here. I don't know, man. Like it's wild. It doesn't quite have the same logic as like the sequencing in All Star Superman, but there's a feel to it where it's like you get exactly what's going on from panel to panel.
Yeah, this is the new status quo is these dudes are coming through as two acrobats whooping ass, and they're
Mm.
trying to set up their own like reputation
Mm-hmm.
for how they are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I
This is a
also love the
community outreach.
I also love the fact that, to your point, no backgrounds because you don't need them. You want the action, but there are props all through these first panels.
Yes.
But then the moment the action settles down, well, now we can bring the background back into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Yep.
good. Really good. Look at this action.
Wow, yeah,
Look at this action.
this is harkening back to, and just the the thing that draws me into this page is like, I guess the third panel of Dick Grayson across the top with that really tucked flip with the cape, and then I guess the landing. It's just so sick, dude. This selling that Dick Grayson is a very acrobatic version of Batman.
Well, look at the cape acting all through the. I mean, from
Yeah.
here to here to here, like, oh, you look at that and you're like, oh, that's how Batman's cape works. Which I don't
Hmm.
know if you could say about literally any other artist who's ever drawn Batman. But suddenly it's like,
Yeah.
I look at this and suddenly I'm like, oh, that's how his cape moves. That's what it's supposed to be. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And that's why it doesn't trip him up, because he can tuck it when he's doing
Mm,
flips and stuff, or when he's doing something, and then he can whip it back out to like alleviate smoke, or whip it around to get him a nice field of view so he can beat these guys' ass, you know?
yeah, and it's like even just in the way that it moves from panel to panel, it feels like all right. So there's these, it's got these ridges, and it's like they're weighted at the points, right? And so that allows
Yeah.
him to control it in a way that's almost like a weapon or something.
Hmm. Yeah,
Ah,
I've always loved weighted edge point cape Batman.
agreed.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But yeah, those 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 edges that have those weights where he just snapping them like the worst towel snap you ever got in your life,
Well
right
said.
right in your eyeball, you know, or I've seen him like use those to like bleed people, like make a cut above their eye, so where they start bleeding and they can't see, and he can beat their ass. You know, he just does a lot with simple stuff like that, and that's Batman's edge, right? He's playing harder than you. He's better at the game than you, and he's relentlessly cheating. That's why he's such a super guy.
Well said. Well said. I also just think like there's so much body language, like there's so many bodies doing shit across these two pages.
Hmm.
Every single one of them is just perfect. You know what I mean? It's like you get motion and weight and like a logical placement of like tension and I don't know. I don't know of many artists who could draw a two-page spread like this where you're literally drawing probably 20 different bodies across the two pages, and the sense of weight, motion, and proportion just stays so good.
Yeah. I mean, he's just a master.
Yep. Again, just a little bit more pencil action, leaving a lot of work to the colorist, but what he does draw is pretty awesome. Um, I love when he uses these really sketchy, fast hash marks to sort of shadow things in motion. And you see him doing it here with shadows. We've seen him do it with other shadows, and you're seeing him do it with the tire treads as well. Just a great solution that doesn't really break the reality of his more minimalist, delicate lined world, but is still using some of that more comic booky manga style language to communicate motion.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself, man.
All right. This is just fun. More body language as he's developing this Professor Pig villain, which he created with Grant Morrison.
No,
Um,
let me pay $75 to look at your sketchbook for 5 minutes. It's
ugh.
just like, just go through all of the big fat ones that you just keep, and they're just for all your doodlings on the phone and the different stuff like that. I would literally, he could sell tours like that. Like, have a big security guard stand right next to him. All right, you can flip through it. All
It's
right,
so
time.
yeah, it's so funny because, like, to my knowledge, I don't think he's ever put out like any sort of sketchbook release. We'll get these little bits and pieces here and there, but this might be me projecting. But I almost feel like he like doesn't want you to see this. Like this is too rough. You know what I mean? Like he wants it
Mm.
to look better by the time you see it as a viewer.
And see, I when I draw my best, it looks like the bottom two Professor Pigs. When I do the best I can, and take 3 days on something, it looks almost as good as those bottom sketch Professor Pigs.
Oh, just more amazing action, more amazing senses of motion and weight and impact. Like
Kicking
this,
somebody's face into the wall and their whole body's going backwards.
oh
You know what I'm saying? As you push their head forwards in that reverse, that sort of U.
yeah.
And he's ripping off the belt of explosives that the person had on him. Oh my god.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I love that when he does that subtle stuff where it's like you can track this belt through these panels where it's like he makes impact, he rips it off as the face goes into the wall, and then he opens it up to find, oh, they're empty. And then some more great weighted cape action here at the bottom.
Oh, and just look at the tilt of these panels, like in regards to like they're all off kilter as well. But I'm
Yeah.
looking at like the tilt of the top two panels, and just the borders going nutso on each of them,
They look like
even to the
jazz.
point where the bottom one is almost 3D, like
Yeah.
it's bent in space.
There's something about the combination of the geography and geometry within the panels and then these gonzo panel borders. These are almost like jazz notes. You know what I mean? Remember in the movie Soul where they were like portraying
Yeah,
music? Like
yeah,
that's kind of what this is like.
that's wild. Yeah, you're right. That's that's a great comparison.
Just some pencils from the series here.
Look at
Look at
that lady's hair. I mean, obviously that kid's acting, but like you start at this lady's hair because she's a real person that either survived Damien or got saved by him or some combination therein.
Mhm.
And Batman's like, "What's up, kid?" Kid's like, "Yeah, I got something to do."
No, I mean, I think that's what I noticed first, but you're absolutely right. Like that's some lovingly rendered hair. Um, but again, even on this, where it's like this very strong linear perspective, like this is some 1 point perspective just leading to the gang coming down the street. Look at how curved this world is. And feel how different that is than like what we were seeing in All Star Superman. It's just a totally different approach,
Just look at
even
that
though not that
building.
different.
Look at the arches on that build. They're right there. Yeah, come on, man. That's like those are those weird like architectural touches from back when this neighborhood was good.
Right. Right. Again, look at the weighted pleats on Batman's cape. Love that. Look
Mm,
at the footwork even. Like there's a
yeah.
grace. You know, he's turning to square up to get ready, but this foot's still dragging. So you know he's going to bring it around and set it down somewhere over here. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I love you mentioned earlier about how none of the four wheels of the car are on the ground. Here we've got two images of Damien where it looks like neither of his feet are on the ground. Like he's just bouncing into battle, man.
And just so
Oh,
you get the confidence too. Like he
that's what I mean.
really doesn't care.
Yeah, there's like a springiness, like, oh, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, and they just and you see like he's got his hand on his knuckles like old Burt Ward.
Yes, sir. And like, look, you know, maybe there's some over rendering of the details in these faces, but like this image sells. Like this is Batman and Robin about to kick some ass, and it doesn't
Yeah.
need to look badass. Like it communicates. You know
Yes.
exactly what's about to go down.
Communicates always a big one.
Yes, sir. All right, so now we're going to move. This is just one image of Madman. This is sort of late stage Quitely. We come off of Batman and Robin. He is now widely considered like one of the greatest working artists, and now he starts to do some weird one-off experimentation. I just love this image. Look at how simple. So we've seen his art style working with this very highly rendered digital color. Take a moment to appreciate like this is almost animation style coloring. Like it's just
Mhm.
flat color with a little bit darker color to indicate shadows, a little bit lighter color to indicate some highlights. It looks just as good, if not better, on his art style than the highly rendered stuff does.
I mean, I'd say better. This is
Yeah.
very good looking stuff, and it's oh man, this I mean, artists take note. Like, look how instructive this is. Look how little you need to actually sell three dimensionality, to sell lighting, and to sell that this is a comic book world. Again, this concept that you're ever going to pick colors that are just like what's in the real world is
Right.
preposterous. It
Well,
doesn't. You have to create your own world.
and looking at this, I would guess, I don't know, but I would guess that Quitely himself colored this because this again works in sort of his more monochromatic, more toned down, almost pastel-y color choices, which is a really great pairing for his artwork. All right, let's move on. I had to put a couple pages.
Oh, you had to.
I
You know
had
you
to, man.
had
I had
to.
so Whiteley did this short story in some one shot that DC put out, which essentially just retells. I think it's New God. It's either from New Gods #1 or New Gods #2 that Jack Kirby did, and it's not
Mhm.
an exact panel for panel retelling, but it's a beat for beat retelling. Like the action and the characters are exactly what they were in the Kirby.
Dude, down to the sitting on the couch. I mean, I love that part that the first time you saw Darkseid, he was just sort of sitting on a couch like a regular guy, and
Yes,
him
sir.
just lovingly recreating that is so funny.
And that's what I wanted to point out. Like, this is an absurd image, but I think that Frank Quitely knows it's an absurd image. You know what I mean? Like, Quitely wasn't trying to draw a badass Darkseid or an imposing Darkseid. He was trying to draw a Darkseid who's supposed to be badass while sitting on the couch in a one-bedroom apartment. And that is inherently goofy. And I don't think Frank Quitely has a single problem with that.
Yeah, it's definitely that's what it was meant. And also, I think it's instructive that like I like Orion's acting. It's like,
Mm.
yeah. He just comes in to see this crap. Welcome to Earth, Orion. You just know he's not expecting to see his dad with his wiener out and his little S&M draws sitting
So
on the
funny.
70s couch. Nobody expected that, you know?
I also love the fact, yeah, you're right. There is like, this is a very heroic moment. Like he's got his hand out, like, stay back, citizens. And I also love the fact that the dialogue is, it is accursed. And you've got this of this dude man spreading in his dress on the couch. Oh, it's so good.
It is accursed.
That said, there is some amazing action stuff that happens here. So I love this image as a follow up of Orion standing there with his chest out, pointing at him, and he's just chilling on the couch. Oh,
He
it's
goes,
so good.
I I dare anything. You see my outfit?
But in this, in this little panel, like that's a great little composition. You tilt the axis to show how weighty Darkseid's presence is. Everything is kind of moving this way. And look at
Mhm,
this crown molding. Like it's just about how you space the lines apart, but it just sells. Crown molding, same way with
mhm.
this door frame. We're not
Yeah,
cheaping out on the door frame, man. But again, it's nothing but just where do you place the lines? And suddenly you've got this perfectly rendered door frame.
yep. And I just always love the way that when left to his own devices is like, "Hey, Frank, do you wanna use, like, one line to do somebody's jaw or cheekbone?" "Nah, man, I think I'm gonna need about 47 lines." And
That's
he's gonna do
That's the
it.
closest he comes to like cross hatching. Is it just like scratches, and it is very Mobius inspired. So it's like you got
Mhm.
to give him that. But yeah, he uh he goes ham with those face lines sometimes. But I love this little 4 panel sequence right here. So first of all, up to this point, we've established very rigid, 6 panel grid, but suddenly, I forget the name of this character. Darkseid's minion shows up, and suddenly the panels go off kilter, right? And these Kirby dots are so explosive, they're literally shattering the borders of reality. The white of the borders come into the panel because of the Kirby crackle. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
man.
But just like so, I think it's Kanto is this guy. Clear or Devil Lance. I don't know. We'll call him Devil Lance. So Devil Lance clearly has the upper hand. Sucker punches him or stabs him right in the back. Great sense of motion, great figure drawing. But Orion, never to be counted out, counters. So now The panel seesaws back the other way, right? It tips this way first. Now it tips back this way as Orion turns, cocks this punch. He's got this guy's staff in a hold, so that staff ain't going nowhere. You know he's about to deliver an absolute haymaker. We don't need to see it happen. All we need to see is this dude just shattering through a brick wall with the force of that punch.
And then we look through the hole that was created at the aftermath of it. I mean, they say all the time, they said you can violate the rules, and I've seen Frank do it too, of like showing the foot impact the face as a
Sure.
kick, but it's always less effective than stuff like that. It just takes more real estate. So you have to like figure out when you're gonna spend, the real estate.
Yeah, and it's so different. Like Jack Kirby would show a giant fist that takes up half the page right up in the foreground, and this guy's head snapping back like this, right? So that's a Kirby approach to this sort of action. This little bit more nuanced, little bit more third person perspective is no less impactful. It's just
Mhm.
a totally different approach.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Here, this is just a great sketch. You can see it's from '03, so this is a little bit out of continuity. I just needed to throw this in here. He's drawn the shadow, absolutely minimal use of lines, still not using solid black, still just has to use those scratchy lines, but he's got the shadow of the shadow showing you the shadow. I don't know. It's just amazing.
Well, dude, and just the nose shadow too. Like the nose shadow on that shadow. I just I'm a sucker for the shadow. I'm meet me in 2025 when I do my woke reimagining. I'm a 1940s black guy. I'm unseen. I'm almost like a shadow. I'm just gonna start shooting these motherfuckers up.
I'd buy it. I'd buy it.
I love it.
Yeah, good stuff. Look at this Spider-Man. Okay. Look at this Spider-Man. Okay. um, this is one of the rare times you do see him use solid spotted blacks. This is almost Frank Miller
Yeah,
inspired, right? Kind of
dude. That
interesting.
yes, Frank Miller when he was drawing Spider Man before he even got his hands on Daredevil. Yes, that period of Frank Miller. You're right. That's exactly what this looks like.
You know why that's significant though? Because he's doing the 3D webbing like the fucking movies. So you see that in the little
Mm.
nubs that he puts on the outline of the figure, and then you see that on the little white nubs that he cuts into the fields of black.
Yeah, you're dead. Also, that web is remarkably like super simple. Like he grabbed somebody else's rope. It's almost like he didn't care to do anything with that. I mean, this is obviously like a sketch or whatever, but it's very interesting. It's
Yeah.
very interesting treatment.
I'm kind of a sucker for more of the single line, like silky strand web as opposed to like the bunch of spaghetti McFarlane web. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and which I gotta say, we gotta start calling it the Mike Golden web because he drew it like that like years before. And I don't know why nobody remembers this. It's like a hole in everybody's memory of all across all time. Michael Golden was drawing that web like that. But anyway, years
You're
before
right.
McFarlane. But I will say, this is also instructive in regards to like he can draw like this.
Right.
He does not prefer to,
Right.
you know.
Agreed. And again, just like the little things that he thinks about and decides to include, look at where this web ends. No other fucking Spider-Man artists do this. The
Mm.
web is coming out of his web shooter. And
Mm-hmm.
then he
Mm-hmm.
wraps his body around it to get whatever leverage he needs to do his thing.
And you're right. That's galloping on his gauntlets and on his boots in regards to, like you said, the ringlets of where the web pops out. That stuff.
Yeah.
That extra bit of texture, even in this so-called simple treatment,
Yeah.
that's instructive too, guys. And you know what this also reminded me of? R.I.P. John Paul Leon, and also
Mm.
R.I.P. Alex Toth. It's
Yes.
like it's like him acknowledging that he likes people like that and trying to do something with what they do, but his thing is his it's almost like his powers in the ticks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought this was a really interesting image for a lot of reasons, which we just covered. So now almost up to the present day. Jupiter's Legacy, my friend. Jupiter's Legacy absolutely knocked my socks off because, as we've been talking about here in the late stage of his career, he just figured a bunch of shit out, right? He was always great. And things like on this page that you see, drawing mechanical things and cars in perspective. We saw the very first image we looked at. He was great at that from the start of his career. But things like acting, things like action, things like how to use the camera, things like how to pace from panel to panel, that's stuff that it takes a career to figure out. And we are lucky enough to live at a time where Frank Quitely has figured all of that stuff out. And so we get Jupiter's Legacy. This moment, in the context of the book, is even fucking better than it is right now. But like, look at this. So they've just teleported onto a freeway because they're trying to escape a horde of super people that are pursuing them. She's super strong and invulnerable. He's just a dude, but he's got a teleporting weapon, which is what he's using. So once they teleport onto the freeway because they're trying to escape other danger, suddenly they almost get hit by a car. Thankfully, she's super strong and invulnerable, so she can fucking stop that car, much to the driver's chagrin, who leaves his fucking glasses back here behind the steering wheel.
So awful.
Oh, it's awful, but again, it's that attention to detail, moment to moment storytelling, immaculate anatomy and body acting, and then way he's using the environment and physics to sell the power of the moment, right down to like deciding to make the divider between the lanes of the freeway these two lines so that what it emphasizes the motion in both panels. It emphasizes the fact that they're running and everything's moving here, and then it emphasizes the way that the car is not moving while this guy is here. So I
Yeah,
don't know, man. Just gorgeous stuff.
it's just hard as hell, man. And he exits frame. Anytime somebody goes out of frame, they got messed up. It's simple
Yeah.
comic book language.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think I recall later in the book, in the next panel, like she asked, "Is that guy okay?" And he goes, "Yeah." And then
Yeah.
and he's so messed up. His like his like legs are sitting on top of his head, type messed up in the street. And she goes, "Is that guy okay?" He goes, "Yeah, come on, let's go."
That's some of that signature Mark Miller nihilism going on in that book.
Oh god. Well, because she's not an expert super person. She's been basically suppressing her not her powers, but herself as a super person for a while. She's one of those people who went super ennui with superpowers because she didn't earn them. She's a second generation. She doesn't know what to be or who to be. So she's not big in the super game, even though she's as powerful as any superhuman's ever been in this world.
Yeah. No, which is, which is a great point. And so it's a little bit cynical or nihilistic because she just kills a totally random guy, but it is a good illustration of like she doesn't quite know what she's doing here. So
Hmm.
that's a great point. It's all part of the story. This is just absurd. Like the sense of motion and impact and power, and like this is a more stripped down version too in terms of his art style. Like if you
Hmm.
look at these hands and even these feet, like still the best feet in comics, but I mean he is using a more gestural single line when
Hmm.
he's drawn this stuff. Also, this is a very small panel in the book that it's from, but holy shit, like this is just such a fucking masterful moment of action. Look at the
Yeah.
ground buckle with the force of what's going on here.
It's like he's got all the skills that he's gotten over the last 30 years, but with some of the simplicity of some of that way early independent comic stuff that he was doing.
You're totally right. I mean, this is almost like a Hergé drawing with the way that
Mhm,
it is just like this single quick, very
mhm,
organic line that he's using to define everything.
mhm.
Crazy.
Again, instructive artist, look what you can do, like being simple, but putting a lot of thought into something. You don't have,
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to figure he worked his underdrawings to death. Like this pose of her
mhm,
swinging this thing, this body language is just it is outstanding. It is breathtaking. I will say that this body language right here is breathtaking. So the
And
amount of I'm just going to say the amount of
but
work he did on the underdrawing before he got to the point where he could do it
mhm.
with just a single unbroken line was probably immense.
And last things last, it isn't necessarily super aesthetic.
Correct.
It's how you would look if you were really somebody messing with your kid and you got something near you that you could slam into that person. You're not gonna strike some Jim Lee, Travis Charest pose while you do it. You're gonna grab that thing and slam the hell out of that dude, and this is how you're gonna look, putting your all into it. It's not
You
gonna
are
be aesthetic.
100%. You are gonna swing it however hard you can, however the hell you can. Damned if you look sexy while doing it.
Mhm. I mean, there's a power in that, for real. Oh,
Absolutely.
that's one of my favorite parts next here.
Oh yeah, so good. So this woman has the power to grow, much like Giant Man. But she was hiding out because super people are illegal. So they find her at her place of work. She jumps out the window and she grows in midair. So she's 10 stories tall when she lands. So this is the moment that she lands. And this again is just this is Frank Quitely at the height of his powers because it's showing everything he does well. So her moment to moment of landing and trying to get up to start running is immaculately executed body language from panel to panel. The panel to panel storytelling, you think she got away. Now we're focused just on her legs and what the fuck is going on around her ankles. And now it's
Mhm.
like, oh, she falls. And so she's been caught. And now she's not going nowhere because they got her arms too. And the bad guy moves in. It's such a roller coaster ride from beginning to end, and it's 4 panels.
Yeah, and I just loved on this page. You don't have to zoom in on them, but there's a couple of nice fat ladies on this page, and he just has never been about like the whole world is skinny people, the whole world is 8 feet tall people, the whole world is just little crummy people and super people. There's so many graduations or gradations between so-called normal or portly and superior proportions.
Yeah,
In his world, there exists everybody along the rainbow, and I just think that's really cool because he
yeah,
loves people. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know, maybe he's an introvert or whatever, but he obviously loves people on some level because he observes them so much.
No, I agree with that. I mean, and that goes back to we looked at that scene from the beginning of Flex Mentallo where everybody was eating at the cafeteria in our last episode.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing. And that was very, very early in his career. It's something that's defined his work for a really long time. Is like he loves the earthiness, the idiosyncrasies of real people. This is not a as much as he might even sometimes draw an idealized world, like people are people. So why should it be that you and I should get along so awfully? Um, all right. So this is just some interesting stuff going on here with, again, those minimal backgrounds. But again, justifying it diegetically, where it's like they're in a back alley in between two blank walls in an industrial space. So you don't draw a background and it works.
Dude, and the one thing about this book, the choice to not draw the mom with any eyebrows, because maybe I don't know, in her partying days she messed him up or something.
Mhm.
His ability to still show so much emotion on her face and different things without eyebrows. I I don't know what he was doing. Maybe he was like literally trying to do that challenge of like, okay, can I give somebody emotion without eyebrows? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't know. There's something. I'm not talking shit. I think it's a weird choice, and it works for some
agreed.
reason for the way that this whole thing is playing out.
I think one of the other reasons I pulled this page is I love the continuation of him drawing child super people from Batman and Robin. Like
Hmm.
this kid is way more grounded than Popsicle Head or Lollipop Head Damian Wayne, but continues to be an absolute delight through this entire book. And
Hmm.
quietly just revels in drawing this little kid doing some superheroic shit, which is
Hmm.
awesome. Okay, this panel again, it's a quiet moment, but in a book where he may be skimping on background sometimes, he's not doing it all the time. And look how much mileage, though, he gets out of just organic, non-ruled squares, which are clearly post-its and scrap paper, and a bunch
Mhm.
of scribbles on them. But even the scribbles, it's not just nonsense. Like, look at that's a leg, that's part of a helmet. He's working out his costume details. Here's his
Mhm.
brass knuckles. Here's a gun that he was designing. Here's another
Mhm.
helmet he was designing. Like all of these, some of them got equations on them.
Dude, I love this character in
Yes.
the book. I mean, you're meant to love him, and you're meant to see his like what happens to him as a big sacrifice. But geez, Louise, he's just so badass.
Look at this too, though. Again, Frank Quitely draws everything well in perspective. First of all, look at this coat hanger with the classic twisted twisted neck.
You know that you would just do 3 lines and keep it moving. you,
100%.
you know
Why
you
would you
would.
draw that three-dimensionally? It's so insane. Oh. And then look at I love this. So he draws this helmet in 3 dimensions in such an interesting way, but on the inside you get to see just a hint of what looks almost like football padding. Like this looks like the inside of
Mhm.
a football helmet where it comes like around your jaw underneath your ear. And the fact that he's taken the time to put those 3 dimensional shapes inside the helmet and make it feel like, oh no, this is something that's functional when this guy puts it on. I just love it so much.
You know that would be black as hell if somebody was drawing that. Just put that as black as hell. Just
Just
black as night in there.
just crosshatch the whole thing. Just lines one way,
Yeah.
line the other way. That's all you got to do.
Next thing you
Not him.
know, you're a genius.
Not him. He's going to draw the outline of the hanger underneath the costume. That's what he's
Uh,
going to do.
Don't do it to him, Frank.
Jesus.
Don't do it to him, Vinny, please.
So look at what this is another thing with the economy of line. Like, look at what he's getting out of literally just ruled lines. He's getting a whole hospital and he's getting beautifully, he's getting these beautifully functional blinds, which, as we're going to see in an upcoming image, end up getting really fucked up. And the fact that he places them there to begin with becomes a great choice when the girl in bed here unleashes some energy that fucks up this whole room.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's
Nah,
so
this is getting my
minimalist.
favorite stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I no, I agree.
Oh, but you're right. So minimalistic, you were saying. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, you zoom all the way in, and even this bed, right? Like he's got a really intricate sort of underdrawing here, but this is not a functional hospital bed by any means. Like he's just
No.
making up whatever the fuck's going on down here. But just the act of like spacing out some parallel lines within those shapes creates such a depth and such an interesting visual character to this bed.
Dude, he's
So
the
good.
greatest. He's
It's
the
so good.
greatest.
I mean, I think we've clearly established that. Also, look at this lovingly braided
Loving.
hair. Lovingly braided
Lovingly.
hair. I gotta
Yeah.
just zoom in on that.
This beautiful chubby Wilkes Booth here. You know, was it or Annie Wilkes? Annie
Annie
Wilkes here.
Wilkes, yes. Oh, so good. Um, this I thought was interesting. So this is like a recruit the superheroes thing that he does in 4 panels, and each panel has to tell its own story, and each panel does.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something, again, you don't really get out of anybody but Frank Quitely. There's a sense of place, of personality, and of reaction in every single one of these panels.
Yeah,
So
and
this
see,
is,
Light Girl has a light over there. As stupid as it is,
you're
it's
right.
lit from the bottom, and she's doing some obviously crummy job. So Light Girl is because all and these are all superheroes in hiding.
Correct. I also want to point out, too, that like even just what he's choosing to put in frame, like you can tell straight lines in a grid, nice and simple. She is a studious, responsible person. She's got her papers stacked up really neatly here. And like you said, her power is a light power. So there's some light in the frame.
And then we
Now,
got the Wood King, who's like a one of those farmers market guys selling plants or something.
yep. He's clearly in some sort of ramshackle place, people just putting up tarps on sticks or whatever for this farmer's market. There's some buzzard or seagulls. He's probably near the ocean, in probably a less developed country. Oh no, he's in Berlin. Well, Frank, I don't know. I read it as less developed country, but yeah, it's just beautiful, the attention to detail, because this is what you need to know about him. He's a poison ivy type.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's dumpster. Oh no, he's either dumpster diving or he's taking out the trash because he's working a menial job. But either
Yeah.
way, he's a more artistic type, which you could tell from his loose fitting beanie and the fact that he's
Mm-hmm.
got all this graffiti in the background.
And then Jack Frost is just kicking it. Dude, if I had cold powers, I would be like this homie right here. I'd just go to where nobody wants to be, even polar bears and stuff, and just be out there cold as hell, being able to be alone. Oh man, that'd be great. If I had frost powers, that is.
Right. This page is just so great to me though, because it's like you don't need a single word of dialogue, and you almost can fill in the blanks of exactly what each of these people are saying when they're approached to be part of this resistance movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see them in circumstances that suggest that all of them would go for it. You know, farmers
Mm-hmm.
markets, menial jobs, boring jobs, and the middle of nowhere. Why would they say no? You don't even have to have lines here.
It's such great storytelling. So this is maybe obligatory.
Yep.
You know, here's the thing. All right, so this idea of like this ultra powerful psychic who can literally construct a reality to imprison you with, and so we're using the process of creating a comic book panel to illustrate that. Genius, unbelievable. What I want to point out is I love when Frank Whiteley dips below the waterline in a single panel, because
Mm.
this above water versus below water, nobody does that shit like Whiteley, and it's so good. And he keeps doing it in Jupiter's Legacy, by the way.
Dude, and I just love obviously the little flecks and dents in Homeboy's big boy armor, but also the loving way he does sand. Like, look, man, I don't care if you're Frank Whiteley, Kishiro Otomo, I don't give a damn. You ain't gonna be able to draw every grain of sand. But what you can do is draw how the light catches mounds of it, the
Mm.
little bits of it, and you can kind of do a little pointillism and suggest stuff. And he's just that. I mean, I think he has advanced pointillism to where it has an actual appeal of line. There's something between pointillism and line that he has adapted, and is his contribution to this stuff. It seems
I
like.
I agree, and I mean you can see him doing it here to do everything from like indicating clouds to the texture on brick to the texture on rock to the texture on sand to the bubbles on the top layer of the ocean. It's all just those Frank Whiteley tick marks. Mm,
It's just fantastic.
yeah, beautiful.
I love that guy.
This is only in here because, again, for somebody who has this bad rep of like drawing the same face every time or whatever, there's so much goddamn personality in this face. And look at that
Yeah,
fucking hair. Look at how lovingly crafted that hair is.
hell yeah. I love this image. I'm so glad you put, dude. We're definitely simpatico, bro. You've been picking stuff that I would definitely pick.
Good, good. Also, look at these hands. Just gorgeous. Nothing about them is stock or shortcutted. These are three-dimensional hands that are exactly what you need to depict this guy doing whatever the hell he's doing.
Look at these fucking hands.
Oh, old Freddie Mercury as a superhero. That's what we're looking at.
Hmm.
All right.
Power.
Just straight power. I like we can't say anything other than what's already been said, but like I started talking about, this series is really just Frank Whiteley doing everything. We've kind of seen him progress, with his figure drawing, with his gesture, with his anatomy, with whatever. This is him at the height of his powers, just having fun. It's just great.
Yeah, this is very very powerful. Just because of how obviously everybody's flying, but like this is a lot of drawing, but
Mm,
it isn't as much as he could be.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? There's open space for you to see the power. Imagine if he over rendered those buildings in the back, those sort of
Mm.
stair step buildings in the back. Imagine if you over rendered, like if you put every brick in that back wall right there that the guys are flying past, how busy that would look, how messed up that would be.
Completely. I also think it's worth noting, we pointed it out in that Daredevil piece that he did with all the hand ninjas, but like this is another one of those examples of you're drawing a whole crowd, choose body positions that almost look like they're communicating one sense of motion. So like you could see
Mm.
this being the same guy tumbling through space from here to here to here and maybe even to here, but they're all different guys. So it adds to the sense of chaos. But within the chaos, you're creating things that are very readable, right?
Dude, I think
So,
that's a technique that I might employ myself. Like, yeah, each of the guys in a parabolic arc could be
yeah,
the same guy.
yeah,
So just pick differing positions. That's a great art director type note get there, Bill.
there you go. Um, this line work, I think, is great, and it shows you what he's doing with hair, which I know we keep sort of bringing up, and maybe he's underrated for it. Look at all that hair.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
one, not one of the same hairstyles amongst all those people.
Yeah, it just why would you tax yourself like that? There's so many people and they're not wearing like hats or anything that obfuscated. There's not a big light taking up the whole left or right side of the frame to focus you on those guys. You know what I mean? There's not all
Yeah.
these tricks that frankly I'm gonna employ in my own comics. I'll put hella stuff in the front the foreground to obfuscate how much I gotta draw.
But
Look at those platform shoes. I mean, everybody's shoes are killing it, but those platforms are killing it.
that's what I'm
Oh
saying. Like,
man.
this is all it's all technically window dressing for our super chick with, this rich guy. But like in the window dressing, he communicates the world. And like, there's not a single person in this frame who's wearing the same clothes, wearing the same shoes, or has the same hairstyle.
Dang.
And like that may sound like not a huge achievement, but go ahead and look at crowd scenes in any other comic book you might enjoy. Just go ahead and take a look at it and compare.
Mhm.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Oof. Spoiler alert if you haven't read this series. I won't give you the full context.
Oh boy.
But let's just
Yeah,
say this
just
lady got
yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah. And it's a giant betrayal because so yeah, you get that from the picture. No spoilers, but you get that from the picture that this is A, messed up, B, a giant betrayal, C, a bunch of people betrayed her. You know what I mean? This is
Look at
like
how
the et tu brute.
correct. But look at how shocked her face is.
Mhm, mhm,
That I think is
mhm,
what you're saying. It's like this image communicates an entire story with these
mhm,
very nonplussed people. This guy looking, how about that? And then her face in total shock that any of this has happened. Let's just
mhm.
say that is exactly what's going on in this
And
moment.
that underjaw line that he does, that little zigzag line for her underjaw, coming up, yeah, that around the yeah, and like going up into her cheekbone. He
Mhm.
loves that. That's how he sees. Remember, we saw that in his Superman stuff.
Correct. Yeah, and I think the decision to put that in this image goes towards selling that she's a little bit of an older woman, so you can see more of those lines on her face, under her
Uh-huh.
eyes, etc. So he gives her that appropriate age with just a few well-placed lines.
Mhm, mhm. Yep.
And again, just look at the perspective. Every one of these things going in her back is coming out overlapped in perspective of her front. Like,
Oh man.
oh,
And it really
brutal.
gets it over how brutal it is, because if it was less cartoon yeah, if it was more cartoonish or less yeah, as many times I've seen this image, that big halberd sword going through her coming, oh jeez
Yeah.
Louisers.
Yeah. And look at the way the blood is running kind of in rivulets down through the grass. Like,
Mhm.
again, height of his powers. This is what he does. And here's what happens to that. Here's what happens to that faithful vertical blind hospital room after
Mhm.
some power is unleashed. Just indulging in his penchant for those cracks and creases.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you know me.
I know you.
Cracks, cracks,
Cracks and
baby,
creases.
cracks,
Uh,
seams, and force. Cracks, seams, and force.
there you go. Here it is for you.
Like literally, that is what it is. Great
Oh,
stuff. I love that. Yeah, dude, I think she exclaims in this. She like screams out
yeah.
to like screw off guy and destroys the whole room, but just telling the guy to get out of there.
Yeah. But again, it's like you understand even just from this image, right? Like clearly she unleashed some sort of energy that was of a certain
Yeah.
intensity that's going to fuck up this side of the room, but not like blow it out completely. So this lady's scared. This guy's just caught off guard. It just all works. It's just all
Hmm.
working.
Powers. Oh, that big giant lady in the ISO cube. This is a particular one. Good pick on this because yeah, you look at the scale. I'd say what force, cracks, seams, scale. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying? And maybe scale goes before all those
For
because he's
sure.
so masterful at showing scale. This big ass lady in her prison gear, uh, in there, and then you go back to the smaller cubes for all the rest of the people, the lives that they're living. The fact that they can't decorate her cell because there ain't stuff big enough. What's she gonna put a big Danny Bonaducci poster on her wall or something?
Well,
Like, what are you gonna do?
she's new, right? Like she's the one who's been most recently captured.
Yep, yep. So there's no personal stuff. Yeah, that is a brilliant point, dude. Because she could technically have something, but yep, she's just new and got processed. Good.
I think I
Yep.
have the pencils for this. Maybe not. Yeah, the other thing that I love about this, scale being a perfect one, but like there's something specific happening in each one of these cells. Like he's creating a little world in each cell.
And I
Look at
think
the
he had a little practice in some of this with some of the prison. I don't even remember how much he drew it, but the prison that they kept that weird doctor in
mm,
from that they unleashed in the second arc in the authority that he drew. He's had experience drawing mega prisons.
yeah, no, for sure. I also just love just a little bit of business. Like these two guys are talking to each other. This guy's on the microphone. This guy's going to get lunch or something. These these trucks drawn in perfect perspective with their roll up backs. Like it's just the little details. This guy who's driving this little floating platform, he's got his own little pod there. I don't know, man.
So hardcore,
It's
man.
just great stuff. Great stuff. Um, this is a great example of like him deploying detail when he chooses to.
Hmm.
You know, this obviously the background's very sparse, but where he puts the detail and where he chooses not to put the detail tells almost as much story, right? So here you get these warheads in the foreground and then you see them all receding into perspective on either side of the frame. So you get, oh, this is a giant something overloaded with warheads. But then the fact that like almost the whole panel's empty except for that tiny figure right there,
Hmm.
scale. And then
Hmm.
we're going to show this face who this guy is telepathically communicating with as this is happening. And he's just like, fuck you. And so we're going to focus on his evil eyes. And now, just the sheer destructive power of this thing coming through the atmosphere, you don't want to look at anything else. You just want to see this nightmare is entering the world. But the fact that you go this view and then this view, and you have these opposing fields of negative space, you automatically connect. Oh, it's like a pop zoom, right? It's like here's the
Mm.
giant thing, and then we zoom right in and see he's at the very front of it. And it's just the choice of like mimicking exactly the angles and reversing where your negative space is connects these two images in such a powerful way.
Mhm. No, absolutely, and just yeah, zooming in on a guy just basically about to die or get the majority of his powers taken away to where he gets deposed as the leader of the superheroes, uh, in of this world, and it's just like you hardly ever get to see even somebody like Superman
Mm.
do something this titanically big. And I think that's Miller's thing, and that's why he always Miller is smart, dude. Like
Oh
as
yeah.
much as I give him crap for being a sub Grant Morrison and definitely a sub Warren Ellis, the dude is a marketing genius. He has an idea that could be a $1 billion franchise every single day, probably twice a day. And he chooses to like literally change the lives of people like Frank Quietly. I saw there's an issue of a big 2 hour. We've outdone it on this one, but there's a big ass 2 hour interview on Miller Time talking to Frank about stuff, and Frank pointedly says, "Yeah, ever since the Jupiter's Legacy deal, I've had a lot of time to just sit and think about what I want to do and blah blah blah." It's like, translation, after I got half of that and I make money off of this in perpetuity, I get money. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I got a little bit of that Netflix money. I got money to where I'm not
Right.
as hand to mouth all the damn time anymore. And I can really sit down and think about what I want to do. And obviously, you gave me that. So guess what? When you come up with your next thing that has undead zombie armies fighting on the moon through a time dilation, you know what I'm saying? I'll draw that for you because you literally have changed my life, you know?
No, absolutely. Um, yeah, just I mean, it's going to be more of the same as we look at this stuff. Just the combination of power of acting. I love this. Her skidding. It's like you immediately get, oh yeah, she just flew at super speed and she's landing to talk to these girls. Their reaction. Yeah,
And how many people would have drawn a bunch of lines? A
that's what I'm saying.
bunch of lines instead of that smoke. That smoke is easier to draw than that bunch of lines, but it takes years of drawing to even know that.
That's a very good point. The fact that he's making these vertical lines, that he's got that signature Frank Quitely squiggle to show you that it's something kind of warm and handmade as opposed to something like cold and mechanical, so that you
Mhm.
don't get the wrong idea about this girl as she's working on it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's little stuff like that. This treatment
Mhm.
of electric energy and the way that she's deflecting it, and so the way it kind of forms this bow shock, and how he creates perspective even within the tendrils of energy because
Boy.
they're curving around her. I mean, come on, man.
Dude,
Mm.
I will not say that these episodes we're doing are for everybody, but for the people they're for, these are gonna be masterpieces. They're gonna love these.
One would hope. I mean, we're going as deep as possible. So this is another just
Love it.
great. Love it, love it, love it. Love the little kid doing a superhero thing. Again, he looks like a little kid doing a superhero thing. Um, and there's just some great shifts, like the pop zoom thing. I think he does a lot. The choice of camera angles where we're going from super wide. It's the school bus in the neighborhood. You see the door being kicked off the back. You get a sense of place. You get a sense of motion, and then boom, we zoom right in. Not far enough that we don't place where we are in the school bus. These are the
Mhm.
kids sitting at the back of the bus, but boom, we pop in to see all the kids there, and we know that our flying kid has just zoomed out the bus without ever having to see him in these first two panels.
I mean, it's my favorite thing that he
Oh,
does, dude, is establish stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah, oh, that's one of my favorite pages too. Go to it. That's my
Here we go.
favorite page.
This
Oh
one?
my gosh. No, with the one with the sharks. But anyway, it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
well, yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
blow
get
through
there.
this quickly.
We'll get there.
So this is sort of shades of what him and Morrison invented in We Three, where a
Mhm.
character is moving in such a way that like he can't be contained by the panel borders, even though everybody else is.
Mhm. Mhm.
So obviously you see that with as he's breaking these panel borders, but something that's not doesn't immediately jump out at you is this 9 panel grid is one single image broken up into 9 panels. It's the signature quietly down shot, but here this
Mm.
van is parked. There's another car behind it. This is all asphalt, and these are two elephant doors that you would drive cars through. And
Mhm.
so this team of SWAT guys is coming in from all angles. So they're in different positions as he's blasting them as he moves through the space. But this is a single image that's been subdivided once to show you the SWAT team moving through it. And then in a lot of ways has been subdivided again to show you how our lead character moves through the space between where the SWAT guys can see in order to fight them. And that is just some nonsense.
I mean, perfectly stated. It is like such a degree of work and conceptualization that so many people would just be like, all right, just even thinning out the borders would make it easier to like maybe draw,
Mm,
like
mhm.
but he's like, no, if
Well,
I fatten the borders, I need that to show how he's
that
moving across.
exactly. You need to have the negative space so that you can see this isn't just some weird gimmick. This is literally like, no, he's finding purchase in the panel borders. He lives in the gutters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's so good. Um, this again is just look at the line work happening here. This
Oh,
this
that was my jam right there. And again, glasses. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, in the top panel, the dude tells him something. In that panel, he gets some new. In the second panel, he gets some news that there's that big bunch of crap falling from the sky that we saw earlier.
Yep.
And then the third panel is just his glasses floating in the negative space of the hole he made in the roof as he flew away to save the day.
With
It's
all of his civilian clothes and the
yeah.
cup of coffee he was holding scattering in all directions.
Yeah, but once again, best feet in the game. That boot
Look at
coming
that boot.
to
Look at that
just
boot.
he flew right out of his clothes and his glasses. And, oh
Oh,
man!
it's genius.
And just I love the aftermath panel too. He's just like
Oh,
he's
it's
just looking at all that crap on the ground. He's like, ugh.
fantastic. And just this look at four little tick marks, but that's the little bit of debris still falling out of the hole above him. And then he runs outside. Oh, and there he goes. He's flying off into the distance. And again, look at the use of negative space to just draw your eye. Boom, right there.
Mhm.
That's what we're looking at when we look up into this empty sky.
Mhm. And dude, the wherewithal to draw a building knowing that people ain't gonna look at it so they can look at something else.
Exactly.
Ugh.
Oh, man. All right. This page kicks ass.
So hard.
So underwater fight scene. And again, look at it's just here's another two great examples of Frank Whiteley breaking the surface of the water in a panel. Gorgeous. But look at the layout of this page. I mean, the action takes us down on this diagonal, which creates
Mhm.
enough space to see this guy arriving above them, but is also appropriate because they're sinking as she knocks out the girl in civilian clothes. And then as he arrives, boom, she explodes out the top. And look at just the gorgeous.
Yeah, let's zoom on that water because that's just it shows that she spun up there, like because I don't know if she strictly has flight powers, but she has some sort of like levitation or something that's not quite flight, I don't think, but
Mm,
like she swirled up through the water to come up. You know what I mean? To take her place up there to fight.
oh,
Super sick.
look at that level of. I mean, that's like the level of detail Michael Turner was working on when he was doing Fathom, and like Whiteley is not a guy known for Michael Turner level details. Oh, so now we get to the pièce de résistance. Um, I could literally do an entire episode on every page of this book, but Quietly Illustrated one of Grant Morrison's multiversity books, and it was called Pax Americana. And it's
Mhm.
essentially a Watchmen riff with the original characters that Watchmen itself was riffing on, which were the Charlton Comics characters.
Mhm.
We'll go
The
through this.
Question and all those
Yeah.
guys.
Peacemaker, Dr. Manhattan was based on Captain Atom. Anyway, so we just saw that page where the teleporting fight was happening. This page is almost incomprehensible on first look. You almost kind of, it's like a magic eye poster in a lot of ways. So this entire two-page spread is a single floor plan of a museum. So you can see like this, whatever this triangular thing is, goes through all these panels. This statue goes through all these panels.
Mhm.
These walls break through these panels. But what you're noticing is like the way that it's colored and the characters in it are all different from panel to panel, right? So what is that communicating? There are three different time periods all happening here. It's a man being
Mhm.
killed by this guy who's hiding behind the sculpture here. it's the Question, who's the Rorschach like character, investigating that murder in the middle of the night, such as here. So look at this panel. You see half of a body who's bludgeoning somebody, and there's blood splatter happening. Actually, let's do a little bit of it for you. Here he's hiding, and he's looking out this way.
Mm-hmm.
Here he's creeping around the statue, carrying a bust, which is established over here, which is like the morning before the murder happens, or it might be the day up. No, that's so this woman gets murdered. This is the thing. Without reading this recently, I can't quite tell you, but I just want to say. So he goes from here, picks up this bust, is creeping around this side of the statue, and then rushes and bludgeons someone on this side of the statue. I think it maybe is this woman. Um, but that murder scene is discovered in this panel. What's
Mm-hmm.
really crazy about this is that this does read from top to bottom, left to right, like any book would, but it transitions you between three different time periods, all in the same space. So you're moving through time and space, watching three things happen simultaneously, and it never doesn't make sense.
Well, I've heard of Frank. I've heard Frank talk about how he wished it was colored even that tiny bit different on the third. I've definitely
Yeah.
heard him talk about that, and it is one of those things where, well, I think he's shown this to like classes, and he's doctored up the colors himself to like communicate the three different periods even more. But just I again, who else do you give this type of stuff to? I think this is an appropriate one for us to end on
It
because
is.
it is the power of it isn't in any hero image because the damn panels are too small. There aren't any hero images in here. There isn't any. You got to blow this up, put it on a poster. So that's one thing. Number two, what does it have? Sense of scale. Number three, people look at people's clothes. Everybody's clothes, even in panels this size, are perfect. They see the seams in the world and the seams in time as we jump through time. The partitions rather, the seams, the cracks, the gutters are all part of his motif. And I think the last that's interesting about it is when you're communicating all this shit, the communicate the scale of everything, the seams, the communication
Yeah.
of what this section of this picture looked like at a certain time of day or on a certain day.
Yeah.
It's just everything that he's good at is on display here, and there's a reason why. Like, for all of you out there being like who maybe skip to the end or something and was okay, let me see what the apotheosis of this thing is. Let me see. Oh, nice. Let me see what
Sorry, I had to do that for you.
let me see what their overall summation of this guy is because I think he sucks. Well, the thing is, no matter what you think, your favorite writers or your favorite writer's favorite writers, look at this guy as one of the only cartoonists that can do their most ambitious work. What does that tell you? Look at these images. Look at what you're entrusting this man to do, and look at how few of some of y'all's favorite artists you would trust to get across this level of information with this level of economy and with this level of fidelity to so-called reality while also masterfully cartooning.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. There's people you could count on to do some of this. I know several artists that could do this brick stuff. I know several artists that could do interesting layouts like him. I know several artists who can figure draw nearly as well as him. But if you're gonna ask me to figure draw, move characters through space, do uh, the verisimilitude on all of his uniforms of all these guys that are getting rocked by Peacemaker, he can draw you one, two, three, four different helicopters because they're different in perspective.
Mm.
A lot of people could draw you a helicopter from one angle. Hire me if you want somebody to draw you a helicopter from one angle. I'll fire up Google and trace that some bitch lickety split. That
Yeah.
is not art. You know what I'm saying? He can draw it in perspective. He pulls up 15. I saw your little tutorial on Instagram. He pulls up 15 pictures of a helicopter to pick out how he's going to bend it, how he's going to frump it up, how he's going to communicate the helicopter. And I loved this scene. Number one, I love this super lady. I love her mask. I love her costume. She looks so cute and sexy. I love the whole thing about this panel. But this is one drawing and this is time.
I mean, that's the thing. Quietly designed an entire room so that he could tell, and granted it's scripted this way, but so that he could tell this progression of panels in a progression through time and space in this one room. And
And,
again, like you could put that in a script, but to have somebody execute it
mm,
so flawlessly, so
mm-hmm,
cleanly, so readably, like I
mm-hmm.
see in a lot of comics some very ambitious layouts where you're left going, wait, what the fuck? Like,
Right,
you
right.
know?
And look, this would be less awesome if he just drew the room and moved us through. But if you notice, he drew the room, but that first panel's a punch in, the panel where that's a punch in, and then of course the thumb and stuff, that's a punch in. So he's finding areas where you need to get closer and he's using those. He could have just stuck to the grid and tried to make all that play out in the grid, but like each of those ones that are bigger need to be bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's just a look at it without the text over it. But I don't know, man. Just the mastery of like perspective and the confidence to be able to draw this without any fudging and without any embellishment. It's just put every line exactly where it's supposed to be in order to draw this flawlessly. How many people can really do that?
Dude, yeah. How many people are worth 6 hours of discourse? I don't know any. Dude, he really just what he's doing is I'm sorry, more valuable than some of those the pretty cheerleader artists that a lot of people like, man. This is so much more impactful, so much more powerful, has so much more respect for our medium. It's not
That's
trying
the
to
thing.
sell posters and towels and underoos. This is trying to make the like people like Frank Quietly. I'll say it. People like Frank Quietly do more to so-called sell the maturity of this medium than any of the people putting a bunch of boobs and violence and this and that in anything. His fidelity to the world, the tick marks in the wall, the seams, the windows, that fidelity to reality on some level, even while cartooning, does more to mature our medium than Barbara Gordon getting shot and stuff like that, you know.
Well, 100%. I mean, I think he takes seriously um, in a way that is quote unquote adult. He takes seriously that his role as an artist is not just cinematographer to set up kick-ass lighting and um, anatomist to give you physique. Like he
Mm,
thinks, I'm going to production design this. I'm going to create three-dimensional, fully realized spaces. I'm going to figure out exactly where to place the camera, how high, where to tilt it, how, where to move it from panel to panel. Does it make sense? I'm going to make sure that it's readable. I'm going to do wardrobe and hair and makeups to make sure that all these people look different. It's often said that like the comic book artist is essentially the director, the cinematographer, the production designer, the hair and makeup, the costumer, and the editor of a story in a comic book. But it's very hard to find somebody who can do all of those roles. And
mhm.
I think what we're saying is that Frank Whiteley is a master of all of those roles. And so if he's not drawing energy blasts that look as kick ass as the next guy, I don't give a fuck because he's doing all the rest for me. Look at how
Mhm,
much he's doing for you. And that's the
mhm,
last thing I'll say is, to me, he's an artist who cares about the reader and takes care of the reader. He's not trying to like shove shit down your throat. Like, I love cookies, but if somebody was just trying to cram cookies down my throat, I wouldn't take that, I wouldn't take that nicely. Frank Whiteley will bake you delicious cookies and then humbly serve them to you on a platter until you are full. And
mhm.
I gotta respect a guy who takes his audience that seriously, who has that much respect for everything you need to really appreciate your experience.
Yeah, and much like the first person to put balsamic vinegar on some Brussels sprouts and roast them rather than boiling them and funking up the house, I give him a lot of credit for making the boring, necessary stuff sexy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's inspired me more to like as I go into my own little comics practice, even if I'm gonna do the crappiest, most no backgroundy comics ever, infusing a little bit of his thoughts in my and or what I hope to be his beginner thoughts of where he went down this road of being this good. He's a good person to carry with you as you do your artistic pursuits. Like, do you care about this thing you're doing right now as much as Frank Quietly would? If so, what the K favors did that thing? What would Alex Toth do? Man, I'm sorry, man. It's what would Frank Quietly do? Honestly, in the modern age, is what would Frank Quietly do? What would he do with this page? What would he do with this panel? What would he do with this costume design? What would he do with this acting on the page? I think he's mentioned all those above and below the line, or rather, all those below the line things and
Yeah.
directing and all that stuff. But there are people who can direct and light and all that stuff, but their acting is piss poor because all they do is trace fucking photos from porn or whatever. there
Right.
there are people who are good at this, the meat and potatoes of all the stuff you said, but that last part, the acting, is missing. So they'll never even touch the hem of Frank Quietly's garment when he was in 1992 first starting out or whatever. They'll
Yeah.
never even touch that
Yeah.
because they never learned how to act.
Well, I hope that, taken together, this literal 6+ hours that we've just done on Frank Quitely's entire career could be hopefully one of the most instructive breakdowns of like what it takes to be one of the greatest of all time in the comic book game. So take it as you will, but I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm going to carry a lot with me to level up my own game. So
I'm carrying your love with me, Frank Quietly. Yeah,
thanks for
this is
doing it
great.
with me, Ed. This has been a hell of a series.
Oh, dude, it has, and there's gonna be more when we get to Brian Hitchin, boy. It's gonna be nuts. Brian, we get to Brian Hitchin, and we get to Travis Sharayan. We get to
Mm.
we might have to lump some of them together because I mean this guy deserved this much time, and artists that are super great that people love might get an hour, but we're gonna kick ass just like we did on this one. And if you really like this work and you like as Gino Toretto drives by my house. If you really like this work and you really like to support us doing stuff like this, please join the Patreon, patreon.com/the greatest pod. I think this idea was born on the Patreon. Like a lot of our great ideas for the feed, they're just born in this space where we can create and we can talk to you guys about what kind of stuff we can do. So this video series is a new thing. So yeah, patreon.com/the greatest pod. You could also leave us a review. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel and click like on all of our past videos that aren't even videos, they're just audios, because who cares? Let's get nuts.
Hmm.
Let's get some traction on the channel so we can do more videos like this. They could be more part of our repertoire, as it were.
Absolutely. More of this to come.
So for producer Bill, because I know he's tired, and for myself, Ed Greer, this has been an illustrative, thoughtful, well acted, has a great sense of scale ass episode of The Greatest
Pod.
Pod.